Effort.
Yeah.
Effort. So like, and that's another good question. What do you mean by effort? Because I'll see people work out for 4 hours. I mean, there's 15 minutes between sets. They're on their phone. Like, I don't know. It's that, like, is that, I don't know. It's like, how are you going to get anywhere with that? But they do okay. Like a lot of them do like the squat every day thing and bench every day and deadlift every day. And they're decent. The numbers aren't horrible, but they seem to just like, they're just there. They never really go up. Like I have to see progression, even with my clients. Like I don't care who they are, maybe 70 years old. Like in my mind, they're paying me that every time we train, you're going to be better. Whether it's an extra rep or another set, we shorten the time between the sets. We changed the order. You know what I mean? Like we did something that made it harder and you did better.
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, guys, we're back with another episode of Table Talk. Today, my guest is Ryan Celli. Right?
Celli.
I knew you know
That's
what?
Okay.
I practiced it 5 times and I even wrote it out as far as Celli. And
I think technically it should be Celli. And that's how it is in Italian.
Yeah.
But my grandparents always told me when they came over, they wanted to be more American. So
yeah, I need to quit practicing is what I need to do because I always butcher it when I do that. With at one point in time, you had the all-time world record raw.
I did.
And 198s for 1840.
Yeah.
And then you've been through bodybuilding and powerlifting first, then bodybuilding, and then kind of back to powerlifting,
right.
Then kind of back to bodybuilding,
right.
And then into BJJ, where what I want to jump off of is when you got started into powerlifting, because like myself, you started very young. I think at 15,
right.
His stepdad's garage or something
right.
like that.
Right.
And he kind of knew what he was doing.
Right.
And before that, you didn't have any real sports background.
Nope.
So it's your only sport that you ever really known was powerlifting.
Right.
So how did that come to be to where your stepdad knew powerlifting? Because we're going back to 90.
So my first meet was 89.
89.
So you're talking probably 88.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like from like 13 to 15. I remember messing around with the weights, but it didn't bite me. You know, I just did it and I'd be sore and I wasn't good at it and I was weak. And I was only like, the first meet I did, I think I weighed in at like 107 or something, 114 pound weight class. But yeah, my stepdad, his father was into weights and had arms and was big and always trained. And so that got passed on to my stepdad. And then he had some weights in the garage and showed me some things. And we figured out like for bench press, for whatever reason, I was pretty good at it. And he was just like, you should try to go do a meet. There's a local meet coming up. And so that's what I did.
Before that though, you're dabbling. What turned the corner to make you take training more seriously?
Man. So I would say just watching movies with like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Stallone. You know what I mean? Like I can remember like super young, one of my really good friends, like I'm talking, we were young, probably 10 to 12 years old, but he was like bigger and strong, and he had like the sand weights in his basement. And every time I go over his house, he would be lifting. I would try to pick something up. It felt super freaking heavy, you know what I mean? But he could pick it up, and so like I shied away from it. And then his dad went to like a racquetball court type of gym, and we would go spend the day there and just mess around and lift everything. We didn't know what we were doing, just kids. And then that was during part of that period where I was like on and off of messing with it and getting away from it. And then I remember watching the movie Commando and seeing Schwarzenegger's arms and being like, man, like I think I want arms like that. I could go down to the basement, get the dumbbell, sat there, did curls for I don't know how long until I couldn't do anymore.
Yeah.
And then once I felt that soreness and that's what got me going. That feeling that I could like train that muscle, be sore, and then like recover from that and be able to do it again. So like, that's how I think I kind of started to get into it. And then we had that little weight set in the garage, and I would go down there and mess around. I didn't know what I was doing. Like I knew like we had like a 5-gallon like Home Depot bucket, and I would like box squat before I even knew what a box squat was. But I was so weak at the bottom that I like felt like I need something there to stop me so I can judge where to go down to. Yeah. But I didn't know anything about depth or competing or anything. And so I did that. And then, I don't know. I just fell in love with it.
So the bench felt the
best. The best. Deadlift and squat, not so much.
Yeah. Do you have any idea why? Was it your mechanics at the time, or?
I don't know. Had to be like my leverages or my tendons. Like when I had this pec reattached, the surgeon was like, I'd never seen anything developed like that before. So like maybe there was something, but now that was probably because of all the years of training, right?
Yeah,
But maybe originally, I don't have an answer for you.
So as soon as they figure out or see that your bench is decent, you get into, was it a bench only meet or a full meet?
It was just a bench deadlift meet. And it was like at an armory, and there's a bunch of like where I grew up, there was a lot of really good lifters. In fact, if you probably pull up that meet, you'd see, I think Gary Heisey competed in. So, you know what I mean? Like, this is like a little Canonsburg, PA bench deadlift meet, and they had some big names there. But I remember going to that. I think that open powerlifting says 170. I always thought it was 175. I think it is 175. I think I have like one of those Powerlifting USA certificates. Yeah. Because it made like top 100 back then. So I'm pretty sure that says 175. But, and I remember going there and seeing all these guys and being like, what the, you know what I mean? Like, what is this all about? They had the bench shirts back then. Yeah. But that was just the Inzer Blast shirt. Yes. And so everybody's walking around with their arms up. And I'm like, what is this? Like, that's how they're doing all this weight. You know, I don't have that. I didn't know what it was. My stepdad didn't know what it was. So yeah, I was only 15 then. And I'm trying to think, it's interesting because back in high school, we ended up having a student teacher for math, and he was a bodybuilder. And he's freaking huge. And I remember in math class being like, I can't even think about the math. Like, this dude's giant, you know, and like how's this guy? So it turns out that he's from the gym that held the meet that I did, that first powerlifting. So we start talking, and he invites me down to train at the gym that was right next to this armory where the meet was. And so I got my stepdad to take me out there, and it's like on the second floor in the back alley of like an abandoned building.
Well, wasn't that how all meets were back then, though? Is either as a high school gym,
well, this is
a bowling alley.
This was the gym itself.
Oh, the gym. Okay.
Right. So I meet the student teacher, and then he ends up bringing me to the gym that hosted that meet. Right. And I mean, it was super hardcore. I mean, I remember the first time, like, you had to go up these flight of steps to get up there. And there was a big conveyor belt that took, I guess, the equipment up there beside the steps. And, you know, no heat, no air conditioning, nothing, no fans. And I can remember, like, it was at night, and because I had to go after school. And it was about a 25-minute drive. So right away, I'm like thinking, I don't even have a license. Like, how am I going to get here? But I remember going up there and like seeing like the steam, because like everybody's sweating and the environment and the intensity, like AC/DC blasting. I was like, everybody giant, everybody lifting like, you know, plates everywhere. And so I ended up training there. And as soon as I got my license, I would drive there 3 days a week, and I didn't really know anybody. That student teacher trained in the mornings or whatever, right? He was a teacher, and I'd have to go after school. And for whatever reason, they just kind of took me under their wing.
How old would you say they were at the time?
They were all, I don't know. They had to be like 10 years older than me, I guess. Yeah, I'd say 10 years older. So maybe they're like 25.
And were most of them powerlifters or just?
A lot of powerlifters and a lot of bodybuilders. Okay. But all competitive. This place was a shithole. You know what I mean? It really was. And the only people that went there were people like you and me. Just like, that's what we did. but because I could bench so much, like I was benching, more than some of the not highly competitive guys, but some of the regular people. So they must, I don't know, but you know how it is. They respect people. We respect each other when you see somebody that lifts or.
Well, until you get better than they are.
Yeah, I guess. yeah. But they respected that weight that I could push, and the owner really took care of me too. He would like help me out, give me like some kind of workout plan because I really didn't have one. Just lifting. I know. Like I said, that first one was bench deadlift. And then like, that's where I learned like how to squat, how to arrange the workout. I remember he wrote me up like a 4-day-a-week routine. It was like squat, bench. So Monday squat, Tuesday bench, Wednesday off, Thursday was deadlift, and Friday was like shoulders and arms. And so I just followed that. He had like I still use it to this day. It's like a spreadsheet. It's all my clients. There's like 12 weeks. Like a spreadsheet laid out. Yeah. And I, after every set I did, I'd go up to him and be like, Mark, what do I do next? He'd be like, what'd you just do? And I'd say, I just did 95 for 8. Do this. Right. And every single set, I would go up to him and ask him. And he always told me what to do. No questions. Back then, there was no personal training or, you know what I mean? There wasn't.
No, it was all like a group type of thing.
Yeah, there was no such thing. So, yeah, thank God he did that. And I remember the one day driving there by myself in the winter, and I get there and like Mark's not there. I'm like, fuck, I have no idea what to do, And then I started trying to figure it out. I'm like, what am I going to do if this guy's not here? I got to figure this shit out myself. And then by then too, I was starting to meet other lifters. There's a bunch of other teenage lifters that were really, really good. And a little bit older guy than us would end up taking us to the meets. So he was like our ride and our coach. And he was a big influence too. So
now during that time, were you competing single ply?
So that really first meet was just raw because I didn't know nothing about it. And then after that, I got a bench shirt. What's even more funny is after I seen that, I can remember going home and I literally found like all the smallest t-shirts I could find, Dave. And I think put like, 10 of them on, had my mom like help me squeeze in them. And then you can feel that resistance, right? I know it wasn't much, but it was like, it gave me that idea of like, oh, that's what this is.
What about a squat suit?
So squat suit, I ended up getting into that stuff too. Yeah. So anytime I competed in a full meet, I had just a champion Inzer.
Yeah. Well, we should note that at that time there was really no raw division.
There was no such thing.
There was
right?
There was just gear.
It was all single ply then.
Yeah. It was probably more. Sport was more divided based upon anabolics or not anabolics. Right. Everything was either single ply, multi. Well, I guess there wasn't multiply in the IPF, but
not at that time. You're talking like late 80s.
Yeah.
Early 90s.
So all single ply. So there was nothing else in the blast shirt. So what did you feel like the first time you got a blast shirt that actually fit?
Dude, I mean, I don't know. I loved it, but like it took me and my dad like 20 minutes to get in it. Right. Like my arms are stuck like this. Like, how am I supposed to bench with this thing on? But I figured it out. And I think I still have one of the original. I should have brought it. I think I have one of my original blast shirts. It's like literally like this big. The arm's probably that big around. But yeah, I just remembered like everybody did it, right? So it was like, didn't like scare me or freak me out. Back then I would say like the only thing I got out of it was like, if I could touch and go something, I could pause it with the shirt on.
Yeah.
So like whatever that is, 15, 20 pounds.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, that's
5,
just
10%.
being that's just a teenager benching under 200 pounds, so that's all I could get out of it. But then that gym, Prince's gym, there were some marathon suits, but I never had one on. I just had the Inzer champion suits. And like they taught me how to wear it, how to put it on and how to squat. And a lot of it's just kind of self-taught, right? You just like, that forces you to squat correctly almost because you have to sit back into it to get it to work right.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I just loved it. I loved trying to time it and build up that tension. And and stretching that material out and getting that spring out of it.
I remember the first time I ordered a bench shirt, kind of the same frame of mind that you were at. Like, you have no idea what this, just everybody else is wearing it. I ordered it with all my pumped measurements, just for some reason in my brain, I thought if this is going to look better.
Yeah.
That, I believe it was Ernie France. Somebody from there actually called me, just to validate, because it's like a 20-inch arm and I'm 235 pounds or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, of course, it's all right. Yeah. And then I get it and I can put it on myself. Yeah. And I mean, it didn't do shit. And then I'm like, I screwed this up, but I don't want to call them back and say, I just screwed this up. And fortunately back then they weren't $500 or whatever they are like now. It wasn't, so I just got another one. Right. And then, in the gym I trained at, there was a crew of people there, but everybody kind of come and go at different times. And I can't remember the one time that they were there to put the shirt on, but nobody was around to get it off. Right?
Come on.
Oh man, that took that took a lot of time. I ended up hooking it on like the dip bar handles.
Yeah. And just
to try to get the thing off. And over the years with that, it just, I don't know how it was for you, but the carryover was okay. Maybe for me, 30, 40 pounds that I would base if I was going to use it after my squat, because sometimes it's like, what? I don't feel like I just don't want to deal with this shit. My squat went very well.
Yeah.
All I'm going to do is pick up maybe another 15, 20 pounds. It's not worth the bullshit,
right?
To be able to do that. Yeah. And I just pass on it and not use it.
Yeah.
And then until you start seeing later on people getting, 100 pounds and stuff. You're like, what the hell?
Then I also started to figure out, like, we used to use baby powder.
Yeah.
Baby powder everywhere. And like that would help it slide on better. And so like once you wore it a few times, it kind of started to fit better. So I figured it out. And the squat suits, like I said, I think I just learned that just kind of on my own. There was nobody really showed me how to use it. Me and Dana were talking. I was trying to remember even like some of those meets. I'm like, I don't even remember like who I trained with or who helped me get those on. I think I did it all myself. I know my stepdad would come sometimes to get the shirt on for like heavy bench days, but like the squat suit, I just had somebody put the straps up for me.
That's really all you really needed.
Yeah. It wasn't too bad, right?
I got stuck in the gym one time with that too, to where I couldn't get the straps down. And I had to go, there was a little drugstore on the corner. I had to go to the drugstore and ask the cashier to pull the straps down off of the thing. And, but the squat suits were a little easier to learn because you didn't have to, you could still use whatever technique you were using. It
didn't change it that much.
No, there wasn't like a magic technique, to be able to get more out of it.
Yeah.
Later it changed,
right?
But then it was just a glorified singlet,
right? It's just like I always said, it was like wearing like a pair of really tight jeans or something and squatting.
Did you find that if you used it for one meet, it had to become your training suit for the next meet, and you needed a new suit for the meet after that?
So no, I don't remember. I had my equipment for a while. Like wasn't one to always be getting new stuff or changing it out. I mean, so the thing is I grew, right? So the first meet I did was 114, and I've been up to every single weight class up to 220. I competed in every weight class.
Yeah, so it's getting tighter even if it's
so as I grew, like that one's done, that doesn't fit anymore. As soon as your form starts getting all messed up and you're like, wait a second, this isn't working like it used to.
Yeah.
And then you get a new suit. So yeah, that's and deadlift at the time I started conventional, so that didn't affect that at all. And then I learned sumo, which is another crazy story that comes from Prince's gym. It was just like one day I went in because I went to, I think it was USPF, like teenage nationals. And there was like, I can't remember the kid's name, but like, I was like, he was like in a weight class above me. I think I was in 123s and he was in 132s. Hartman maybe. But I seen those numbers and I was like, what, how is he doing that? But I think he was a sumo deadlifter. So then I was like, wait a second. And there's also a PA state meet, teenage state meet, that I remember seeing this one kid. He had a lever belt. First time I ever seen one of those. And he was a sumo deadlifter. But he wore the lever belt back, like with the latch in the back. I was like, what is that? Like, between that belt being on backwards and then the latch, and then a sumo deadlift stance. So like I got one of those belts as soon as I got home, or, you know, got one of those belts. And then I tried to learn sumo, but I couldn't figure it out. And this random day I go to the gym and I asked Mark, like, he was a conventional deadlifter. And I said, how do you sumo deadlifting? Oh, you want to go ask that guy over there. To this day, I don't know his name. I've never seen him again. And and it's how I teach deadlift today, like the way he taught.
Mm-hmm. So what did he tell you?
First thing was like, I remember him saying, okay, no matter what, you're going to set up this way the same every single time, whatever we come up with. And he placed my feet. I don't remember how he got the width of my feet, but your feet are going to be out wide. Same over under hand grip. You want to leave a space between your shin and the bar, so that when you go down and grab the bar, your shin will just maybe touch it or maybe not, but close.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to sit down to the bar. You don't want to bend over. Even things like taking the slack out of the bar and taking the slack out of your arms, and then almost like squatting the weight up more than.
So how did he explain taking that slack out of the bar? Because we didn't have deadlift bars back then.
Yeah.
So
so it was like more the slack. So I guess more, he said, take the slack out of your arms.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't thinking so much of, I mean, at the time I was deadlifting maybe 300 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no.
Well, I'm asking because if we're trying to help somebody, that's what we're trying to tell them to do, especially with bars that actually do bend.
Right. But
you have to have enough weight on there to actually keep the bar on the ground,
to
pull it out.
Right.
And with some people, I'll tell them just to listen for the click,
same.
The bar, and go from there. But with what you're telling me, it sounds like he was just trying to elongate your arm, make your arms longer.
Right.
So take it out. So there's no.
As soon as you push, that bar is going to travel.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any looseness that has to be taken out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was it. And like I said, I never seen him again. Don't know who it was. And that's how I learned how to deadlift sumo. And it ended up working out.
So how were you training during the early part of your powerlifting career? I mean, he's telling you what to do. I assume it falls more into some kind of linear type of model.
Yeah, it was all the linear progression type stuff. So like, as a general rule, I'd say they taught me like, hey, if we have this competition coming up and you're 8 weeks away, you're going to be doing sets of 8. If you're 5 weeks away, you're going to be doing sets of 5. If you're 3 weeks out, 3s, 2s, 1s. And that was it. And we had it set up of like still how I train today and how I train my clients today, the main movement, and then followed by accessory work that ties into that movement. And because that gym had powerlifters and bodybuilders, I think maybe that's where they kind of merged that together on their own as a gym.
So what would it look like after the meet?
After the meets, it changed throughout the years. I mean, I think when I was young like that, I just went back to training Monday, or you know what I mean? Like just went back to lifting. And I remember being a little bit lost. Like, what do I do now? Like,
because you're not 8 weeks out.
No,
you're like 16.
And things felt heavy. At some point again, right? I don't know about in the very beginning, but eventually it would be like, how did I just did that on Saturday, and now I can't go in. My warm-ups feel heavy. So like it's just trial and error over time, just competing and then listening to my body and like being like, okay, well, there's no way I can go heavy again. I remember there's times where I felt good after the meet and I tried to jump right back into it, and then like almost always got hurt. And then finally I was like, well, just stop. Like, what are you doing? Like, your body must need rest. So I started to figure out I would go more towards a bodybuilding routine after the meets.
That's what because
like a mindset thing, right? Like you're burned out, you're kind of tired of lifting heavy. And so that was a way to like, okay, now we're doing sets of 20 and like just change it up completely.
When I was younger, I would hit the meet, but then try to I'd take 2 weeks off and then try to find another meet.
Because you're strong.
12 weeks out. Just because I didn't know what to do. And then when I became somewhat more intelligent, I used HIIT training in between. So I'd take 2 weeks off and then do like Mentor's hit training or
Yeah,
some shit,
yeah.
because it was hard.
Yeah.
And I wanted something hard, but I also didn't want to know, as you kind of pointed, I didn't want to know how weak I got.
Yeah,
because
try
it's
to stay away
depressing.
from that. Yeah.
And I didn't understand that we peak for a meet. I figured once you got strong, you just stayed that way.
Stay there,
And
right?
you would move up.
The higher that peak, the more it kind of comes down.
Yeah. When did things move from the local level to more the national level outside of like teenage nationals?
So you figure, like, I did some bench deadlift meets. I did some teenage full meets that I think were like, I don't even know what federation they were, USPF maybe. And then at that time I was probably like 132, and then I started getting into, I mean, I was introduced to like the APF right away.
Well, yeah, I have to point this out. When I was looking through your open powerlifting stats, you're the only guy I know that had smaller multiply numbers than raw, until I went and looked.
Oh,
it was earlier. You were just getting started.
Yeah.
So, just a few years into your career, you're in multiply.
Right.
And how did that come to be?
So like so really I never compete. I did an APF meet at 181, like in multiply, but I literally sewed like two champion suits. Actually, it was a crane suit and a champion suit together.
All right.
Like that was,
so that was basically single ply.
Ply. I had a denim shirt,
and
that was double ply. Double ply. But as far as like a double ply canvas suit or anything like real kind of suit, I never really.
I don't even know if that was around at that time either.
I don't know. So we had like a local bench deadlift meet in our area. And I remember one year the guys calling me from the meet saying, "Yo, you got to come out here. These guys got like 4 shirts on." Because like there was no rules. It was just like a powerlifting competition, unsanctioned. And they're putting on 3-4 bench shirts, and like they're allowing it. And, their wrist straps are 3 feet long. So then that's kind of where I got the idea of like, so 2 suits together and try to do a meet. But I still think I squatted, what did I squat there? 700 at like 181, something crazy. Yeah. So the single ply, you were asking me about like after, besides teenage nationals, when did I get in?
Yeah.
So like, I think you did this meet also. Was it 95 APF senior nationals? I think I did 95 and 96. But I was just I just had single ply stuff then. It was a champion suit and a Inzer bench shirt. I think in 96, the Inzer made that advanced high performance heavy duty one, right? So I think I wore that at the second senior nationals that I did. But that's when all you guys were showing up, and like the monolift I was introduced to, and then all the France.
Did the monolift screw you up when you would go to a meet?
So I remember doing it at one of the APF teenage nationals. Like, I think my stepdad was traveling. I think he sent me with like one of his friends to take me there. So I like, I had some of the guys from the gym, actually. I remember being there, but other than that, it's kind of like on my own. And I remember like either at warm-ups or the day before weigh-ins, people saying like, cause a lot of people, unless you trained at Westside or something, you didn't know what a monolift was. And I remember people saying like, just walk it out, because it's going to mess you up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's going to throw you off. So I think just walked it out. Short little walk.
Oh, no, that's smart.
You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what they told me. So that's what I did. And it wasn't until those 2 APF senior nationals I did where I used it. And yeah, it was different. I would lift it up, and like, I like to feel the weight. So when I would walk out and step out, you kind of get adjusted to it and you let it settle. But when I would just like pick it up, my feet were already where they should be. I was like, fuck, this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this doesn't feel right.
Your ability to get tight changes.
Until you learn how to brace and like all these other things, a whole different level of stuff.
I mean, the first time I used one was probably in a meet as well, and it messed me up. So that's just walking it out. And then I was at Westside a few years before we even had one. And that kind of sucked because it was jack stands and Louis didn't like to adjust them. So if we were in a crew and he's in there, I had to take it out on his height. And when I would bitch and complain about how my back's getting jacked up, it was because I was weak. you know, and I couldn't convince him to, you know, you take it 6 inches lower than you normally do.
Right.
And so the monolift was kind of like a saving grace for that until he started putting bands on it, because it's going to be lighter for him. And again, that was just because we're weak, you know, we weren't able to handle that. But once we did get it and we're able to spend time, what I started to realize was what you lose from the walkout is torso strength, because you have to brace as you walk out. You take that away because you're using the monolift. It has to be added somewhere, and accessories to be able to keep that ability to do that. And I think that's what was screwing a lot of people up, is they didn't know how to brace coming out with the pick. And then sometimes you need to do it again because you don't know when the squat command's coming.
Right.
It'd be great if you just took it out,
hold that
squat, you know, but usually that's not the case. But I've seen a lot of people get screwed up because of that. And the simple answer is what you did. Just walk it out. You do it all the time anyhow.
Right. And you just got to suck it up and know that you're really not going to get much out of using it anyway.
Yeah. When did your sights start to focus on all-time world records?
I mean, I was never one to like really, like, even to this day, I'll take clients to the meet and like, I don't even look at the records.
Well, there's got to be a point to where you wonder what you're looking at, where you are. And then back then was weird too, because we didn't have open powerlifting. So
they had a folder with numbers in it, right?
Yeah. Or you had to wait till the end of the year for Powerlifting USA to put whatever the records were.
I can remember just going to the meets and then lifting and then being like, hey, this was a record and this was a record and this was a record. Like, oh shit, cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like normally by the next time I competed again or whatever, I'd be up another weight class. And then like, so I never really was probably ready for those records or whatever. So I never really looked for them or chased them. I didn't really like that all-time record. That one I wanted, but it was like going, if we want to go back to that goes back to like one of the first Raw Unity meets, right? So it was like 2008 or something. And if you remember back then, I don't even know if there were like, that was just when Raw was coming out. So like they didn't even really have the all-time Raw.
Yeah. They were trying to figure it out.
So like, I think the first one I did like a total 1807. And I think like Eric and everybody was like, and that Johnny Vasquez was keeping track of some records. And they're like, hey, like as far as our knowledge, like that might be the most ever lifted. But yet there was people that were doing more, but maybe they had knee wraps because it wasn't a thing, right? If they would have said, take those off and this is going to be a record, it would have been higher probably, right? So at the time, without any equipment other than a belt and wrist straps and knee sleeves, they're like, I think that's the record. So like right when they kind of came up with that, I don't even know if it was like officially given to me then. It was just like kind of like, I think that's the most that was ever done. And that was the end.
Thumbs up. Good.
Yeah. And then I want to say right after that, it got like, because it was like brought up that might be an all-time record, David Ricks comes in and I think he hit like an 1818. And so that's the first time I was like, man, I had that, and he just took it away. And like, I can do that for sure. And so I remember like getting the Powerlifting USA out, looking in the back, and first meet I could find was one down in Tampa. And it was like in the summer. And I think he broke it that winter, I think. And so like, I'm going to just go down and beat it. Did
it play out that way?
It did play out that way. It did. I had like one of the best meets I ever had there.
So what was, because here's the dichotomy with this. So what was the training cycle leading into it? Because normally your best meets are your worst training cycles.
Yeah.
And the worst training cycles.
Well, that's true. Like, so ironically, like I had like a really bad pec strain about a month before that meet. Like probably tore some of it. I don't know. It didn't turn black and blue, but it was like I couldn't unrack a bar. And it's like 4 weeks out. And I was like, man, you know what I mean? Like I just trained for this whole thing. And like now, and my bench was really good right then. It was like I was benching 500s at 198. And I I didn't know how bad it was. I just knew, like I said, I couldn't even unrack a bar. And I was like, man, it's 4 weeks away. So I went to my physical therapist. I had an MRI on it actually. And then I went to my physical therapist and he rehabbed it. Just through rehab stuff. And I didn't bench. For like 3 weeks. I didn't touch bench. I just kept training though, kept squatting, kept deadlifting. It didn't affect those at all. And then I remember, like, I'm like, the meet's like in 2 weeks. Like, what do I even open at? Like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. So I remember me and my training partner and Dana were like, let's just warm up and see how it goes. And I went up to 405 and I was like, okay, I could bench 405. Like, I'm just going to stop there, see what happens. So this wasn't the Raw Unity. It was a separate, like, Raw United. Was the federation. Like, Bob Gaynor was like the head judge, and it was down in Florida. So we go down there, and here they're saying, oh, this is going to be on ESPN or Fox Sports Network down south or whatever. I never seen it on TV, but the whole crew was there. TV crew was there. Like, my hip was messed up, my back was messed up. I remember, like, we're in Tampa. I could barely walk. Like, I was sore. Everything hurt. And I get there and they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be on TV. And I remember they let me lift because of travel or something. They remember them asking me, like, do you want to lift on Saturday or Sunday? And I think I lifted on a Sunday. So they, like, rearranged things to put everybody together. Dennis Cherry was there. He did, like, the bench only division. And I remember going into the meet and them saying, like, me introducing me to the camera crew. They're like, hey, this is Ryan Celli. He's going to be breaking the all-time record today. I'm like, fuck, man. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Like, my warm-ups, I was just warming up squats and I'm like, my hip hurt. And I was like, oh man, I don't even know if I could do it. Now it's going to be on TV, right? And Dennis Cherry was there, who, you know what I mean, I looked up to, and one of the best benchers of 198, even though he was just going to be in the bench only. And I'm like, man, finally I get to kind of, like, compete against this guy, you know, indirectly. And I'm not going to be able to hit my best because stupid pec. So I think I opened at that meet at like 445. Like, I did probably a 405 warm up, and like I did before the meet, that went fine. Actually felt really good. And then I did a 445 opener, and it was like 135. So, like, it just ended up being one of those days where everything worked out. I squatted like 625, most ever squatted, like 25 pounds up for my best raw squat. I benched like 530. So that was up by, I think 518 was my best before that. And then Bob Gaynor, if you know Bob, from down Florida, he had lifted on Saturday, and he was like, hey, just so you know, I did a 680 deadlift, and I'm, whatever he was, 70 years old or late 60s, you know? You know, like, keep that in mind, you know? I was like, all right. So here, I think I broke Dave's record at 1820 on my second deadlift at like a 665 deadlift, put me 2 pounds above his record. So I had one more deadlift attempt left, and we went to 680. I went to 685 because of Bob. I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm going to beat you by 5 pounds. And so I ended up pulling that. But the funny thing is with Dennis is, like, they had me and him warm up, like, actually on the platform that everybody lifted on, because they were like filming it and watching it, and I got to see both of us kind of warm up together, which was cool. And I remember him, like, I think his butt was off the bench. I mean, he was heaving it. I'm like, this dude's gonna bomb out for sure, for sure. Like, what happened? Like, I thought he was like a really good bencher, you know? And for whatever reason, when he did the meet, he was fine, but like the way he warmed up wasn't like how he competed, which I thought was weird, right? So they threw him like in with the full meet. So like when we benched, even though he was bench only, he was in with the mix.
Yeah.
So we kind of like, I was kind of competing against myself for the record, and then indirectly against him. And I remember he opened super heavy. and I had to open super light because I didn't know what I was going to be able to do. I think he opened at like 5:25 or something. And then he went like 5:30 and then like 5:35. I mean, something like that. We have to look it up, but it was super, super close like that. Yeah, it didn't make any sense. So when he went 5:35, I'm like, fuck, like, do I beat him? Do I go to 5:40 and say I beat and indirectly beat him? Or do I just come here and do what I was supposed to do and get every pound I can get to get the record? So I went with the record. And so I did a 5:30, he did a 5:35.
At what point during that day, right? Because you're feeling like ass, everything went in bad. At some point in time, your brain had to shift and say, this is actually a gift. This is a good day.
Yeah. After the first squat.
After the first squat.
I would say, I think the first squat.
Yeah.
And then definitely after the third one. Because I don't know about you, but usually if your squat goes well,
the rest of the
meat's going to go pretty well.
Yeah.
Unless you
strain super
unless
hard.
you like blew yourself out, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you finish, let's say that if you finish strongly on a squat, the rest of the meat's probably going to go good. So yeah, it was like after that first squat, I just felt comfortable. Like the crowd was, you know what I mean? Like I had Dana, I had John with me. Like everything worked out. I made weight, and I feed off that energy. So like when there's a good crowd or people are watching me, I tend to do better.
Yeah, for the lifters that would be listening, it's what I'm trying to pull out is never discount a bad day as being a bad day,
right?
Until you actually, have that first attempt and do everything you can to get your mind in the right place. Because I'm sure on that first attempt, you weren't going out there saying, I'm beat up, I'm screwed up, all this other kind of stuff. You can't. You got to shift.
Yeah. That was, like, you just shift. Yeah, you just have to. There's no, I don't know, when I had the, like, you got to remember too, like at the time you're talking, it was 2010. So I had just opened a gym. Just to get away from the gym for the weekend was like next to impossible. You know what I mean? I didn't have any money. We had, Noah was, 6-7 years old, my son. I had to get somebody to watch him. So it was like a big production to get down there and even do that. So like that pressure, I wanted to do the best I could because of how much work and effort it took to get there.
Yeah.
And then all your training partners helping all the time. And like, I don't know, I always felt that pressure that
How did your training change when you opened the gym?
Man, that's a good question too. So I had more lifters to be around. And so if we go back to when I opened the gym, right, that's like 2007. And before that we were lifting at like a Gold's gym. And there was a lot of like police officers and bodybuilders and bigger guys, but nobody power lifted. But like once I trained there, like we started kind of recruiting people, and I met some people that knew about Westside, which I didn't really. I mean, I knew of it, but I didn't know. I wasn't like up to date on the stuff. Like I was just like living my life and lifting, And they introduced me like the chains and bands and stuff like that at that gym. So that was like, like around probably 2000. Somewhere around there is when I got introduced to like box squats, all that type of training. How
did your actual training session work though? Because if you're going to Gold's to train, you're going there with a purpose and intent, go in, train, leave. And now you open the gym and you do everything in the gym, just so gym owners kind of know this. You're cleaning the toilet, you're doing the membership, you're answering the questions, you're answering the phone. I mean, there's a million things going on. You can't leave the phone off the hook.
No.
I'm dating ourselves here, right? Because cell phones weren't there.
That's exactly right. We had actual phone. So my wife, I mean, I would schedule my time to stop training clients, and she would come in, have somebody babysit our son, drive in, which is like a half-hour drive, and she would cover the gym from like 5 or 6 at night till 9, and we would just train.
Now, was it after that all-time world record to where you took a hiatus and went into bodybuilding the first time?
So after those like 95 senior nationals, 96 senior nationals, and me figuring out the monolift thing and seeing all the multi-ply gear, I'm like, I can't. I'm never going to win. It was like Ricky Crane, Angelo from Reside. You know what I mean? Like, I can't. They're squatting 700 pounds at 165. Like,
and you're still at the goals at the time, so you don't have anybody to help you.
At this time, I'm like lifting at a little fitness center in town. Like,
sure.
We were trying to figure out. I'm like, that's when I was saying, like, how did I even get my equipment on? I don't even remember. I was by myself. I was working. I had my own apartment. I didn't have any money. Like, so like those suits at the time were still expensive for the time. And I didn't have the people to help me get it on and off, like you said, get it off, all that stuff. So that's when I took a break. And that was like probably like 97, like right after that, 96.
Now with that first break, did you think that you were done for good?
Kind of, yeah. Like life was happening, right? But I still never stopped training. And then everybody always said, "Oh, you look like," would ask me, "Do you compete in bodybuilding?" Oh, I never did. "Oh, you should. You look like a bodybuilder." So then, like, that's when I was like, well, I don't really need anybody to train with, and I don't need any equipment. And like the NPC is based in Pittsburgh, and they always have the local Mr. Pittsburgh show and stuff. I'm like, maybe I'll just try to get ready for that. So I did that first show in 98. I did a few local shows there. And
how did you do in those?
I did good. I think I won the middleweight division, or maybe I came in third. Maybe I came in third in the middleweights, which is like 176. So
this was a 2-year period of time?
Yeah. So I compete. So probably from like 97, I trained. 98, I did that first local meet, or a couple local meets. And then I was the same thing. I think I took third, and I was like, man, these guys are big. You know what I mean? Like, I got lean and stuff, but like they were big. So I took like 2 years to try to get bigger, which I think I weighed in the same, actually 2 years later. I weighed, and I remember the guy running.
Well, you might have been leaner, right? So let's give you some credit here.
Just remember I remember Gary, if you know Gary, I remember him saying, and how he would remember this, I have no idea. He was like, "Didn't you weigh this last time 2 years ago?" Because he always wanted me to gain weight. I was like, yeah, I did. But to your point, I think I looked better, and I was bigger and leaner, and different look for sure. But you know how people are, right? They gotta kind of stick it to you a little bit. So that was in 2000. Then I won the middleweight division, and I lost the overall.
So I'm trying to picture the training here, right? Because you're going from the powerlifting mindset, which doing a heavy single or even a triple, I don't know if I want to use the word intensity, because I kind of use that as percentage of bar weight, but there's an effort and a mindset that kind of goes into that, right? And then in bodybuilding, you kind of get that, right? If you're doing a challenge set of leg presses for, you want to do 10, but you make yourself do 40, right? But it's different. It's different. And that's a super good point. So I trained like a power lifter. Okay. I think I added a day. So instead of 3 days a week, it was that original schedule kind of gave you that. Went back to that original bodybuilding routine. My original coach gave me 4 days a week. But I would come in and still squat first. But instead of it being, like you're saying, a heavy single, it can't be that anymore. I would do like heavy set of 20. I remember I'd put 405 on, and I would just try to do one set of 20, because it would be everything I had, if I could even get to 20, and then I would go do accessory work. Did that satisfy that itch? It was fun. Yeah. It was fun. It was a different challenge. It's different. It's still different, but it's pushing yourself in a like different way. Well, the way I like to look at it is you make yourself do something that you're not too sure if you could do or not. Yeah. So if it is a squat for 20, you're kind of hoping you can get 15. Yeah. But you really want 20. Right. And it's how much you want to dig on that day. Yeah. That's all. And I remember like going in we were at another different gym at that point, and I remember like going to the front desk and be like, "Hey, can you spot me?" And they would be like, "Man, I'm eating my lunch," or something stupid, and like, fuck, all right, fuck you. And then go do the set of 20, and like, fuck, I don't care what, I mean? If I collapse or die here, like, it's fine. Like, I don't care. It just used to get when I got static. Yeah, a little bit. It's picking up a little bit. So my training
I don't know if you want me to wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
I still trained like a power lifter. I mean, I still benched, I still squatted, and I still deadlifted. I just had like a little bit more arms and shoulder work in there. And then like to end up looking good on stage, it was like came down to like a little bit of cardio. I didn't even really do that much, and diet, like super strict diet. I was just like an idiot when it came to that. I would do whatever. Like I remember like actually going, the student teacher that got me to Prince's gym, I remember calling him like, okay, like I'm gonna do this bodybuilding show now, like, well, how do I do this? He was like, man, baked potatoes, chicken, and like don't drink water for 3 days before the show. So I literally ate chicken and potato, whatever, 6 times a day. I don't even remember when I started to do it, how far out from the show or whatever. I just started at some point. I was never out of shape. I always looked pretty lean. And then I remember like not drinking water for 3 days, which was probably not very smart. I mean, I remember having like an apple as part of my diet. So there was like some fluid coming from some of that, but like literally like didn't drink for 3 days. So I don't know.
So a little bit different than when you were cutting weight.
Much
meats.
Much difference. Because when I cut for meat, I just wanted to be that weight for that one moment in time, and then right back to where I was, and 12 hours later.
All right, let's take a bathroom break real quick. Hey guys, if you like and want to support the podcast, remember we have limited edition items. These items can range anywhere from t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, cups. You never know what you're going to get. Check them out at www.elitefts.com. So we're back. So with that first stint in bodybuilding, what pulled you back into powerlifting?
I think politics of the bodybuilding, like I felt like I should have won the overall and I didn't. And I remember like the whole crowd like booing, and it was bad, and I was like, I'm done, like this is stupid, you know what I mean? Like I almost killed myself, and like they don't even judge it right. So I was like, forget it.
And then what was the first meet back? Or actually, before the first meet back, what did you change about your training? Because 2 years of straight bodybuilding, you're going to pick up things.
Right.
So then when you went back to training for powerlifting, what did you bring over?
So that's when I went to that Gold's Gym and learned about the bands and the chains, and it kind of sparked that whole new, like, wait a second, man, like, what is this stuff? And became super obsessive with it and fun. And then that gym had some stronger guys, a strongman guy I trained with for a while, and some other power lifters that were just local level though. So like that's what got me back into it. I said, like, forget the bodybuilding stuff. I'll never do that. Never do that again. Well, still 13 years later.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
But and then so then I think luckily there was a APF state rep here in Pennsylvania, and he was starting to hold these APF Pennsylvania state meets. So that's when I picked back up, and that's when I think I left off in the 165s and at seniors. And then after the bodybuilding stuff, I came back I think heavier. I was like 198. The first year he only had like 2 years for whatever reason. Like in our area in Pittsburgh, there's never, other than one guy, Jeff Wright from way back, nobody's ever been able to hold like a big meet like that. I don't know what it is, but you would think it would be a great place, but it hasn't worked out yet. So he had those 2 APF meets, and I did the 198, and I was like, fuck yeah, I did every weight class, but I skipped the 181s. So I dieted down for the second state APF meet, and I made the 181s. That's where I wore I think the double ply suit. And that brings us to like 2003. And at that meet, I met what ended up being one of my training partners and like my landlord for the gym that I opened. Because when I went there, I remember weighing in and giving my openers, and I remember this dude being like, "Well, that's your openers?" Because they're high, for this meet. I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "What do you weigh?" And I was like, "I just weighed in at 181." And he was like, "You think you could help me, like train?" Like, and I was like, "Sure." So then we hooked up. So that's where I met John. And then like, so he knew some powerlifting too, but he just did like, I think mostly bench deadlift meets, maybe a couple IPA meets up in York. So I trained him, and this leads into like how I opened the gym and stuff. I don't know if you
want go into that.
So I met him like, I guess in like 2003. I started to train him out of that Gold's, because Gold's was letting me train some people, and that's kind of where I started doing some of the personal training stuff. There was another guy there. I don't know if you remember a guy named Steve Nesbitt. He like was from Pittsburgh, black guy, bodybuilder, passed away, but trained a ton of people. Like one of the probably biggest trainers in Pittsburgh. I also met him there, and he opened up a little personal training studio. And I remember him saying like, "I want you to train people out of my place. Like, here's the key." I was like, "Okay, like how are we gonna do the money?" He's like, "I don't want anything. It's like train people out of my place." So yeah, he like literally gave me a key to this for the little tiny studio. And I was doing some training out of there, and then out of Gold's, and I was training John out of Gold's. And then we just became like super good friends. I kind of had like a kind of dead end job that I didn't like, just installing custom closets actually. But again, like all my jobs and stuff pretty much revolved around my training, I'd probably say. So like,
well, that's the case with most lifters I speak to.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know what time you're supposed to train. So anything outside of that's when you can work.
I can make the money to do what I need to do. Yeah. And that's what I was doing. And, but it got to the point where like, I just can't keep doing this. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then a couple times I would be like, I think I'm going to open a gym. And I probably went to your website or something, looked up the equipment that I needed, and be like, nope, no, I'm not. Where am I going to get that kind of money? And like, who's really going to come? Right? Like, I don't know. So I was back and forth on what to do there. And then one day, probably like 3 years later, it's like 2006, John that I was training, me and my buddy Chris were doing like some jobs on the weekend, like some concrete jobs and construction type stuff. And I remember John saying like, "Hey, my dad has this warehouse in Lawrenceville. If you guys ever need to store like a Bobcat or skid loader or whatever, like my dad has a place." I'm like, okay, like I don't know if we're gonna get into this side gig that much, but thanks. And then when I got this idea for the gym, I'm like maybe I can't buy new stuff, right? I just can't buy it. So I'm gonna look for like used stuff, and I'm like looking on eBay, and there was like a thing up for sale, and it was like a whole lot for like a small personal training studio, and it was like make an offer. And I was like, it was in Tennessee, not even close to me or anything, and I'm like, I put in like $9,000, and it was like offer accepted. I was like, fuck. I don't have a building.
You don't have a place.
Yeah. I don't have anything. Like, what do I do? Like, I don't even know what to do. So I was like, oh, John has that warehouse. So I call him like, hey, if I go get this equipment and pick it up, do you think I could store it in your dad's place? I'll pay him rent. He's like, let me check. So he calls me back. He says, hey, my dad said you can just keep it there until he rents it out. I'm like, really? Okay. Like, okay, cool. Well, Lawrenceville is like in the city. Everything I knew of Lawrenceville was bad. It was just like shit area, prostitutes, drugs, not a good place. But whatever, I'll store my stuff there. So me and Chris were doing the construction. I asked Chris, I'm like, hey, will you come with me? Like, I got this equipment in like Paris, Tennessee, and I need to go get it. And I'm like, I don't know, I guess I could rent a truck. And then John worked for a company that they had like the big CDL Penske trucks, 24, whatever the biggest one is, but you need the CDL license to get it. So John was like, I'm going to get this truck from work, get a driver for you, and you, Chris, and this driver he'll drive you down and you can get your stuff. Cool, man, cool. So we like leave in the middle of the night, like 11 o'clock at night, and this guy that drove, dude, for like 12 hours, whatever the trip was, never said one word. And we're sitting, three of us in this little bench seat, right? Shoulder to shoulder. You know those seats, it's like a school bus.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking to myself, like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, this is insane. So we and it rained like the whole time, all the way down to pouring down rain, to the point where like we fall asleep. I like wake up, look at the windshield, and it's totally fogged over. Like I can't see out of it. And this dude's driving. I like wake Chris up, like, yo, like what the fuck is it? So I'm like trying to turn on the fucking defroster to do this. I just remember thinking, this is so crazy. We finally get there in the morning. I go to this address they gave me, and it's like this little tiny house in this like dirt road. Like knock on the door, and this little lady like unlocks the door and opens the door like that much. It's like 3 chains. You know what I mean? There's like 3 chains going across. And she was like, my daughter will be here soon. And like shuts the door. And I was like, what the fuck is this? So we like slept on the porch, on her front porch, like all laying, waiting, trying to figure out what's going on. Next thing you know, this like Trans Am like rips up, right? And it's this blonde-haired chick. She's like, follow me. Like, fuck, we get in the truck. We follow her to this like storage unit. And she like, opens up the storage unit, and it's like all this like 1980 Universal equipment, which, backing up, whenever I made that offer, I ended up talking to the guy who he was like, I'm in California, but my mom's taking care of this stuff. It's like all new, blah, blah, blah. So I get there and open it up, and it's like, this shit hasn't been touched forever. And it's like stacked and packed in 2 of these units. Like the padding's indented because shit's on top of the shit. The treadmills are like from something me and you have never even seen. Like, you know what I mean? Like early 80s, like the LED light, like bad, and like 800 pounds a piece. And we had a lift gate on this truck. So like, okay, cool. So I'm like, what do I do? Like, I don't know what to do. Like, do I just go home? Or do I take this shit? Or like, do I get refunded? Or like, how do you dispute this? And I remember like just being like, fuck it. Like, let's just load it up. I'm just going to bring it home. I don't know what to do. So we like load the whole truck, right? And there's more left. Like, fuck. So we go and we have to go rent a second truck. one that I could drive, right? Like a smaller one. You don't need a license for. So we go rent a second truck, pull that up, start loading stuff in. Well, wouldn't you know, everything that's left is too tall for this truck because this one's smaller. So we got to like empty the first truck, sort out the high stuff, the low stuff, and we get it all situated. And we drive back home, and I drive to this place I've never been to where I ended up opening up the gym, and we store it there. And I would go after work every night. So work 9 to 5, drive a half hour to Lawrenceville, and like try to like recuperate this shit and like clean it, because it's all chrome. It's all old school chrome stuff. It's like rusted. And, so I would just go every night and like detail it basically and try to get it working. So I'm like, well, meanwhile, I don't have a place to put any of this for a gym. Like, right? I don't have a spot in mind or nothing. So we're looking, I can't find shit. And so I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. We're here. Like, I'm going to train while I have all this equipment. So we started to train there. And then I remember like all people start showing up, right? Like a lot of people I didn't even know, and friends, and we're all training every evening. So this is the best time in the world, man. It was like awesome. I'm not paying rent. I got my own gym, kind of, other than it's in a shitty area. I mean, there's drug deals going on out in the alleyway every night, super sketchy. And I remember eventually, like, I had to pay the electric and stuff. So like I put a sign up like $5 a workout. And so people would pay, like, leave $5 every time they came. But they'd only come when we were there, you know, it wasn't like
yeah.
So it turns out this little area we were in, Lawrenceville, I guess they contacted the landlord and they were like, hey, we're trying to revitalize this area and we know you have this place empty. Can we walk through and I guess like see what they can do with it? And so when they walked through, they said, hey, like, what's all this stuff? And they're like, oh, this kid's trying to open up a gym. And they're like, well, why doesn't he open it up here? Like, Lawrenceville doesn't have a gym. And she's like, I don't know, like, we'll ask them. So they asked me, like, hey, did you just want to put the gym here? Meanwhile, it's like a 3-story building. The bottom is like garage space with garage doors. The second level was actually like street level because there was an alley back there. And then there was a 3rd story that this was like his dad built for like a construction company. So like downstairs was all the dump truck stuff. The second level was like actually was a woodworking shop, and the 3rd level was like his office space. So I'm like, well, how do I even like, one room was like a paint booth type of room. There's only 2 rooms in the 2nd floor. I'm like, how do I even, like, I don't know, I can't even visualize how I could even make this a gym. Like 4 parking spaces, you know. There's an empty lot beside us though. I'm like, okay, well, maybe we can use that lot. And then because of the bathroom upstairs, and John was in construction, thank God, you know what I mean? And he was a woodworker, and he, you know, so he like helped build this place out. His brother was an architect, did the drawings, and so we would get it all mapped out. Like, okay, on the 3rd floor, we're going to put the cardio room, we're going to put the locker rooms and showers. On that 2nd floor, we'll put the gym, and those were the 2 places I was going to rent. So I'm like, cool, I can get out of this shit job. Like, I'm just gonna quit. Like, so this was like 2000. Yeah, like, so the idea came about like in 2006, and then 2007 rolled around, and like I think we're like pretty much ready. Like, it was built out and everything was done. I didn't do anything really the right way. I just did it, you know. Like, and so like come January, I'm like, fuck, I'm quitting my job. I quit my job, and then they're like, oh, you need like an occupancy permit, all this shit. I don't know, like, what is that? So the city of Pittsburgh's super slow. I mean, it was taking forever. You couldn't get anybody to do anything. Nobody was calling me back because there's like this whole thing. They're like, oh, you're going to need an elevator because your cardio's on the 3rd floor. Like, how much is an elevator? You know, it was like, whatever it was, $40,000 to put an elevator in. I'm like, you can't put an elevator. Meanwhile, you remember, it's all built out. Like, I've already did all this. And they're like, okay, well, if you don't have an elevator, you at least have to like fire rate the ceiling of the place below and have a sprinkler system put in, which was like 40 grand or something too. I'm like, I don't have anything. I had, you know, I quit my job. I don't have any money. Like, I bought all this equipment that's old as shit. Like, I don't know what to do. And I remember nobody calling us back, like the building inspector, because they kept saying I needed that because we're on the 2nd and 3rd floor. I'm like, yeah, but we're actually on ground level on this floor, right? But on the drawings, they're like, no, you're on the 2nd level. So I remember like the building inspector, we were trying to call, he kept giving me the runaround. And one day I was like, fuck it, I'm just fucking driving down there and I'm going to find this fucker. Face to face. So we literally drove down and walked through the whatever that was, city county building, and I found this guy. I was like, yo, why aren't you calling me back? Like my whole future's on the line here and you're fucking around, you know? And it's only because you're looking at the drawings and not listening to what I'm saying. I don't think I need the elevator or the sprinkler system. And he like brought us in this room and like brought out the drawings. I explained it to him, and then he was like, oh, you're good. What? Because there was like 2 fire exits and it had to be like a certain distance apart or something, and we were within that range and everything was good. Meanwhile, you know, it's been like, we didn't open till like June, so like 6 months I wasn't working, and was just training.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that, actually before I even opened, in the middle of that time frame, somewhere 2006, in the early part of 2006, like in the spring, we found that New England record breaker raw meat, right? So this is raw, and I'm like, cool, like I don't have,
That's like one of the first ones too.
yeah, I'm like, I don't need the equipment that I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
afford and train for. And we've been training at my place, and we got a good crew together, and like I got like an invite to go do this meet. Remember, it was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, everybody gonna take off the gear, and we're gonna see what everybody can do.
Yeah.
There was like all kinds of chaos behind that.
No, it was great. It was crazy.
Right? You remember?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
like,
yeah, I totally remember.
Inzer, if you were sponsored by Inzer, you weren't allowed
Mm-hmm.
to do it. You weren't this and that. But like Ed Cohn was part of it. What were their names? Jan, Todd, and Terry.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They were part of it. Kazmaier was going to be like the announcer, and all these big names were supposed to show up, right? Mike Miller, Donnie Thompson, Scott Smith. God, I'm trying to remember. All kinds of people came out of the woodwork
Mm-hmm.
to go do this meet, right? And it was in like Massachusetts. So here I am. Like I said, I'm not working. I have no money. I like have this gym that I don't really have yet, with no members, and I'm not open, and a 3-year-old son. And I'm like, I'm just gonna go do this meet. So me, John, Dana, we even brought Noah with us. Sam Bird was in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I go to this thing, and I'm like, holy shit, man. I've been out of the loop. You know what I mean? These guys are Nick Winters. Like, I'm like, holy shit. Like, this is a whole different level here. Ed Cohn was given the rules clinic. You know what I mean? Like, this is, and I had met Ed before, like through the USPF and some of the meets that I did there. Cause like in that open powerlifting, there's a lot of meets I did that aren't on there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's probably a little, whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
The results are gone from back then. So we go into this meet, and it was supposed to be for money. God, I never said how much, but it's going to be money prizes and you can win money. So I'm like, okay, like I'm going to win some money, and it's going to help me with the gym, and this is going to be great, right?
Yeah.
So, and to win the money, it was like a pound for pound best lifter.
Mm-hmm.
It's just strictly pound for pound. So I go there. I remember seeing like Sam Bird warming up squats. I'm like, what the fuck, man? This guy's a freak. Like everybody was freaks. And anyway, I ended up winning the overall pound for pound. Yeah. And like, cool. I wonder how much money I'm going to win. And long story short, there was no money. No money. And the two guys running it, like one talked to all the lifters before the meet to like recruit you in. And then when you got there, like that guy wasn't around.
Yeah.
And you're talking to this other guy. And they we're like, oh, what's with the money? And they're like, oh, well, they had like a MMA fights that night. It was like a big thing, right? Like powerlifting in the morning and then MMA fights at night. They're like, well, we're going to do the MMA fights, and whatever money we bring in from the fights, we're going to give out. Right. So we like hang out, we're waiting, we just watch these stupid fights, like just want to get money and go home. And like the fights are over and like everybody's leaving, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I remember a couple of us got this guy in the back, right? Like, yo, where's the money? And like, and he was like, there was like a table like this, and he was like, there was a box on that table, a cash box. It seems to be gone. Like, what? He's like, yeah, somebody must have stole the money from the fights. Like, get out of here, man. And so we never got paid. We went home, and I remember calling back and forth, calling those guys, the meet directors, and giving us the run around, and nobody got paid, which we probably should have known that already.
Yeah, you would think. You would think so.
But I was like, so, probably desperate for money, and I was so excited that I won, and like, you know what I mean? It was advertised as money. So, but I met Sam Bird, I met Donnie Thompson, I met Nick Winters. You know what I mean? All guys that have, helped me along the way.
So what was it like for you coming up at that time? Because as you said, the companies that were supporting you know, not just Inzer, but all of them didn't like this.
Right.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Right. Because what are they going to sell? Belts and wraps.
Yeah.
You know, if that. But then online, there was a backlash that was huge.
Yeah, I remember.
You know, which was, and I remember all this because we were sponsoring Eric Talmadge at the time, which he was trying to work on this whole rum thing, and he was raw and all this. So I kind of, from an outsider looking in, would see all this and be like, this is interesting. I wonder how this is going to play out.
Right.
Because you would think that the companies that kind of support the sport would have the upper hand, but ended up they didn't.
Yeah.
You know, because Raw blew up after that, which isn't in the best interest of any of those companies.
Right.
You know, at that time.
Right?
Yeah, at that time.
Things changed now.
But the online stuff was very interesting to kind of watch. And it only amplified when some of the, well, basically everybody was coming out of gear to do it because there really wasn't anything else. But the multiply guys that were coming out were just getting lambasted as well.
Right.
Right.
Well, yeah, like I know, like at the time, I remember Mike Miller was like, what was he squatting over 1,000 pounds or something, and he went there and I think he bombed out at like 600 pounds. You know, and it was like, it was just interesting because like you know, and I know when you train in gear, like you have to train in gear to be good. You can't like. I was one of the few that was able to kind of go back and forth with the raw stuff or with the single ply stuff, but like multiply and back and forth to raw, like you can't do good at both, right? Like, at least I haven't. Donnie Thompson, I guess you could say, did pretty well.
They would need more time. The way that I explain that is there's when you have the gear on, there's like neurofeedback loops. You know, like when you pick something, even with a single ply, you know where your hips are or where they should be based upon the tension that you're feeling through the suit.
Right.
Now you take that out, you need to reestablish that all raw.
Right.
And that's not going to happen in a week.
No.
You know, it's going to take time. Where it was interesting during that time because you would see some people that would be in single ply or multiply, then they go raw and their numbers are not real good. And then slowly over time, they get way better. And then they would attribute it to program X, Y, or Z. And it's like, no, you always had that strength.
It just took a while to come back.
You just weren't displaying it.
Right.
Because you didn't have the tactical feedback.
Right.
That you normally have. But then it comes back up. And vice versa. You know, when they go back in, they didn't know what the hell they were supposed to do.
No, it feels horrible when you put all that shit back on again. But yeah, so that was in 2006. And then, yeah, so it took Eric a few years before he started the Raw Unity, like 2008. But that first New England record breaker meet was like one of the ones that kind of opened up that whole door to the.
No, I think so. I think if there may, I don't know if there were any, you know, but I'm going to give credit and say maybe there were. But they didn't pull anybody.
Yeah, no, not the names.
They didn't pull the caliber to be able to say, "Hey, look, there's a real interest here." And even the people that hated it were still waiting for the results.
Sure.
Right. So that was the interesting thing to me is all the haters and all the other kind of stuff were the first people, you know, to go look to see how everybody did.
For sure.
You know, and be able to see.
Yeah.
And then it just, you know, kind of took off from there. What did you do after that meet?
After New England record breaker meet, I tore my adductor. So I missed a 600 pound. I took a third attempt of a 600 pound squat there, and I cut it high. I knew I wasn't going to be able to squat it. So I cut it a little bit high. So you're like, let's just hope I get it right. And then I was red lighted. And so I remember being like, I know I can do that. And it was like, right, what we just talked about, right? Like, I have a monolift at the gym and everything, right? So I'm like, fucking hell, put 600 on. I could have did it a couple weeks ago. I'm just going to do it. And I remember going down and coming out of the hole and like somebody putting a blowtorch to the inside of my thigh. And yeah, I tore it, right? I didn't know exactly what I did, but I know I never felt that before. And I'm like checking it. I'm like, no, it's not black and blue. Like, I'll be good. Even though like I can't walk or go up steps or anything. And then like I remember it took 3 days, right? And the third day I got like a quarter size black and blue mark. I'm like, oh, it's just this little tiny tear. By like 24 hours later, like my whole hip to ankle black. And I'm just opening up this gym. I can't squat now. You know what I mean? We had poured and molded like a strongman stone. I couldn't mess with that. I couldn't do nothing. I was so bummed out. I'm like, here I am. just getting this gym together, got a good crew, just won the overall at this meet. And now like I just fucked myself up. And it took like a year to recover from that.
No, adductors take a long time. When that bled out down to your calves and shins, was that one of the most pain? Because I've done that before. And the most painful thing about it wasn't the adductor. It's when all the blood started to settle in my calf and shin. And every time I would stand up to do anything or take a pee, it was unbelievable. It was like, this is the worst thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
And it was like 3 weeks after doing it. Too.
Yeah. I can remember it being painful and like that throbbing type feel.
Oh God.
And like steps or like going down like into that squat position, like pick up something or like that stone. I remember like there's no way I could do it. So that was kind of like a bummer and a lesson too. Like, okay, like after meet, like you gotta relax, right?
Yeah, I would have hoped you would have learned.
I learned my lesson there, man.
Before I have an all-time world record.
I know. I was just excited, right? Like I was so excited, and I knew I could do it, and I didn't do it again, right? It's twice I missed it. So that took me like a year. So now it brings us to 2007, and then Eric started putting out for that Raw Unity. I'm like, okay, well, here we go. This is actually over the last couple of years started to catch on, and I'm gonna train for this. At the same time, I found what was USPF at the time that later turned into USPA. But USPF had their meet out in California
with the Olympia,
the America Cup.
Yeah,
American Cup they called it.
Wasn't that single ply?
Single ply.
Yeah.
So here's the thing: Eric's gonna have his in January. American Cup's in January. One's raw, one's single ply. And so Eric's was first, and 3 weeks later was the single ply American Cup. And I did both. I won the Raw Unity, and I won a weight class. Like it was in groups then, right? Like I think 181, 198, 220. Middleweight class, and then they also had a bench only section, and they were giving away money for that. Funny, there was some money meets back then, and then the American Cup was giving out $1,000 for best lifter too. So again, I'm like, I'm gonna go win the money I was supposed to win last time, right? So we go down to Tampa. I win the best lifter there, and I win the overall best bench there. So I won like $900, I think it was. Meanwhile, cost us like $2 grand to go, but whatever. It's still fun. And so I did that, and then 3 weeks later, we flew out to California, and I won the American Cup, and then won $1,000 there. It's like, cool, this is great. I'm winning all this money. But
how did you train for that? Did you train all raw and then go into the gear the last 3 weeks? How did you?
So I was looking yesterday to try to remember. I have all these logbooks and I cannot find them when we moved the gym. I just don't know what I did with them. But from what I remember, like it's like kind of conjugate type of method that I did, right? Like with equipment and using briefs and wraps and reverse bands as a way to mimic the gear, but to train raw, right? Because I didn't have the suit on, but I could do like a reverse band squat with like shitty pair of single ply briefs and a shitty pair of knee wraps, right? So like kind of like a suit, but not nearly to that extent. But it would keep me healthy, keep my joints healthy, and I could still overload and train heavy. So I just kind of intermix those together, right? So I would like train raw, but it might be maybe I warm up raw with just my knee sleeves on, and then I would do additional sets with a pair of briefs, knee wraps, and reverse bands.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And like play both in the same workout. And it worked. It worked really well.
How long did you compete then until you went back into bodybuilding?
So the bodybuilding didn't happen until 2013. So I competed from 2006 again till 2012 was my last meet. And when I was done 2012 in powerlifting, like I said, even though I swore I'd never do the bodybuilding again, I'm like, well,
how did you know that you were going to be done with powerlifting that time?
So I did the Olympia meet in 2010. 2010? Yeah, I think it was 2010. So I broke that record in the summer, the raw one. And then that fall, I did their Olympia one out in California. and I totaled 2,198. That was my highest total ever. Again, one of those meets. I had 2 of those meets like back to back, one raw, one single ply in the same year. Right, like, but that never happened. Like, how many meets like that do you get? 2, right?
Like your whole career.
2. I got 2. So when I did that, I lost track what I was saying. Your question was
why go back, or why, I don't want to say quit, but why walk away from powerlifting?
Yeah, so I finished up that Olympia meet, best total I ever had, and then here, like, somebody at the gym asked me to help them load this motorcycle, and long story short, I'm helping them load this bike on this ramp, and they were pushing the bike, and they were pushing it too hard, and like I had the handlebars in my hand, and so when I went to like correct it from them pushing, I just like sidestepped, and I was like, oh, something's not right, like I felt something. But if you would have watched it, you'd have been like, what are you talking about? You just stepped, and I was like, maybe it's nothing. And then like whatever, 3 days later, I like couldn't walk, so I like tore my meniscus basically. And it was right after that meet, and we touched on this briefly before. So once I tore that meniscus, wasn't sure what was wrong. I could squat, but like it would swell up and be super stiff, and they'd drain like 30 cc's of fluid out of it, and next week it'd be swollen again. They'd drain it again, and then I went to do an MRI, and they're like, we can't even MRI it. It's filled with fluid. We got to drain it again, and they said like the meniscus was torn, blah blah blah. So I waited like 6 months, I think, and then I had that repaired. So that brings us to 2011. Yeah, in spring of 2011, I had that repaired, and I was like, okay. He's like, actually, it was just like frayed, and there was shit floating in there. It looked like one of those snowballs you shake up. He's like, so I just basically cleaned it up. I'm like, cool. Like, what are the restrictions? He's like, hey, you don't have no restrictions. Just like let pain be your guide. It's not the right thing to say, right? Because I'm just gonna go. So I remember I had that done on a Friday. Monday I was back to work training people all day. I benched that day, right back to normal. So stupid. Started to squat again. I mean the bar, but I would break out in like a cold sweat. Like it wasn't super painful from, I guess because it already had arthritis in it. And I think once they go in there and mess with it after that, it just gets super pissed off. But I remember like the first 10 days when they call to check up on you, I'm like, man, this feels great. I don't know why I didn't do this sooner. Like this is amazing. I feel awesome. And like for whatever reason, I like went to do my own because they're like, do you want rehab? I'm like, nah, man, I'm gonna rehab this myself, And I get on the recumbent bike and I ride it for like 10 minutes, and then like from that point on, it was jacked. It just, I don't know what I did to it or what happened, but it got to the point where like even if I'd like move the sheets in bed or whatever, like wake me up. But there was that following January 2012 was Steve Dennison's California meet again, the American Cup, and I wanted to go because I ended up like alternating every other year. Like 1 year do the raw meet, 1 year do the single ply, back and forth, and that was like my single ply year. And I'm like, I'm gonna get ready for this meet, and I just forced it. And I think when I forced it, it messed up my hip, which messed up I was having like really bad back problems. Like I remember like squatting, I would rack the weight, and like my whole leg would just be shaking for 5 minutes, and like, and it would only hurt like when it was so strange. I could unrack it, I could walk it out, and I could squat it, and I'd walk it back in. And the second I'd put it back on the rack, it like drop to my knees. I was like, what the fuck? What is that? Like, what is that? I don't know what that is, but it sucks. Right? Like,
well, at least it wasn't during the lift.
Yeah, though. I was like, yeah, I'm like, as long as I have my suit on, and knee wraps, and like my belt, I'm good. And so I trained, and I came back way too soon because I just felt like time was running out, and I kept getting hurt, and like I'm just gonna do this meet. And back then it was starting to get a little bit bigger on the internet, so people are following you now. I have sponsors now, and I just like felt that pressure to go do it. And so I did that meet, and I did really well, actually. I missed this is a funny story. The very opening attempt of squats, I go up, and I don't know what it was, like in the low 6s, I unrack it, and I'm like, man, this platform's like, it's bouncy, right? Whatever. I like walk back, and I'm like having trouble walking back. Like my feet are stuck to the floor, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And like stabilize. I'm like, I cut weight, right? So maybe it's that. And I'm like falling. I could feel myself falling backwards. So as I hear squat, I'm walking it in to rewalk it out. But I think he's seen me having trouble, the head judge, and like gave me the squat man before I ever gave him eye contact and said I'm ready.
Yeah.
So I rack it, and they're like, no lift. And I was like, wait a second, man. Like, I never said I was ready. And they're like, it's too late. So like now I'm like, okay, this is the first meet back from knee surgery. Like, was it the platform or was it just me? Like, so I have to retake the freaking opener again, because I don't want to. I just flew out to California. I don't want to like bomb out, you know. So like that like screwed up my plans, obviously, right? So then I retook it on the second, and then I think I got like a 678 squat, which like my best was like 711. So like not too bad for like 9 months of after having your knee scoped. And then back then there was like those shirts were getting really, really out of hand and tight, and the USPF, was it USPF then or USPA? I think that was his first USPA meet actually. And you weren't allowed to belly bench, they were saying, right? So you're not allowed to touch the bar on your belly, you had to touch on your chest. Well, there's people there touching on their belly, you know, and it's like the sumo versus conventional. Like I could have did it too, but I wasn't good at that. So I just stuck with what I knew. And long story short, I got beat, and I was so mad. I totaled like 1970 or something close to my best, but I lost, and I was all jacked up, and I'm like, I don't know if I can keep doing this anymore. You know, it's just like not worth it, the wear and tear on my body. And then that's where I got the idea to go back to bodybuilding.
Then how long until your next
So that was 2012 in January, and then I did a local show the next spring, so 2013.
How long did it take you to get to the Masters Nationals and win that?
Man, I did that like either that year or the next year. I think you have to look it up. 2014 maybe. Yeah. So like I did this like little local show, and it's funny because I got cortisone put in my back in the facet joints, and I remember going in, and I was like 8 weeks out from the show, and they're like, we're gonna put this cortisone in. I'm like, yeah, but the cortisone, like, let me explain something to you, right? Like, I'm doing this bodybuilding show, trying to explain to these doctors like what I'm gonna be doing. And I'm like, I can't have any fluid retention. Like, is this cortisone gonna mess me up? Like, no, what are you talking about? This is this won't be systemic. This goes in the joint, and it's just such a tiny amount. You'll be fine. Like, you sure? They're like, yeah, okay, cool. So I get the shots in my back, which didn't help. And I'm dieting. Like, it's been 13 years, right? So like I've been out of the loop. I'm doing what I did before, and
chicken and potatoes
and like cardio, like a lot of cardio this time. I'm like, well, I'm also older. Like maybe my body's changed. I don't know, but I can't lose nothing. I'm doing 2 50-minute sessions a day, 7 days a week. I'm training like 5 or 6 days a week, dieting, and like nothing's changed. And this show's getting closer and closer. I'm like, it has to be this cortisone. It has to be. So I started looking it up, like half lives, and trying to figure out like, when's this shit gonna be out of me? And I figure out like it looks like it's gonna be like 6 weeks. And sure enough, man, like 6 weeks, it's like everything started coming off. I remember doing cardio before this when it wasn't coming off, and I would be like sweating like I never sweat before. Like something was going on with that. But once that got out of me, like it just was like magic. In the last 2 weeks, it just all came together. It was like almost like it knew I did all that cardio and just like put me back where I should be. So I go to the show, and I win the weight class, and I win the overall. Cool. Like finally win the overall to the local show. actually, I got to back up. So when I wasn't losing the weight and I was questioning like what I knew or if it was the age or whatever, I ended up reaching out to a dieting coach. So I got somebody to help me, and that's where once I won the overall, he's like, hey, you should go do, masters and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So he helped me get ready for a few shows, and we did pretty good together. And then I even got Dana to do a few shows. She's probably gonna kill me for that too, but both of us doing the show.
Yeah.
You've done it. Oh, yeah. You've dieted down before, but we did good. We did good together. So yeah, I did that from like 2013 to 16. Switched coaches in the middle there, and that worked out pretty well. So like, one was more, low carb, low fat, tons of cardio, and the other guy was more carb friendly and more like a healthier way to do it, and I looked better that way. So I did that and until like 2016, and at that point it was like just getting ridiculous too. Same stuff, same politics stuff, and like, when I said I would never do it and I opened the gym, I'm like, well, it would be impossible because now I'm training people all day, and like, that'll never happen. And then when I got the idea to do it, it's like, oh fuck, I'll just I scheduled 3 people in a row and an hour off, and I would eat 3 people in a row and eat every 3 hours and all that. But after the shows, I would binge, man, so bad, and I would get super sick, and I'd end up in the hospital every time.
Okay, so what do you mean by binge, right? Because there's just for weeks. I mean, obviously there's the day after.
So let me go back to that 2000 show that I did. I gained after the show, I gained like 40 pounds in 5 days.
I've done that before. So. But actually, it's worse for you because you're way lighter. I was 240.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, like. Bad.
It's fun though.
It's so fun
until it's not.
Dude, you can't walk or breathe, or you're short of breath, and you're starting to wonder what's going on. So like, I think just from so strict, once I would get a taste of something, I just like would just pound it, man. And then like, it's like you're enhanced almost, right? You're so sensitive to that stuff. You see like instant. We worked so hard to gain 40 pounds. You're telling me you could do it in 4 days. Let's fucking go, right?
Well, it's for a while there, you look amazing too.
Oh yeah, you're
so full. It's like, man, I put on 30 pounds. I'm more vascular.
Yeah,
and 2 weeks later, you're a blob.
Right.
It's like, oh shit.
I got a funny story. I had an interview at the airport, Pittsburgh airport, after that 2000 show, and it was like the week after the show where I just gained all this weight, right? And airports and how much you got to walk and put a suit and a tie on and all this stuff. And I drive there and like parked and like, dude, I couldn't walk. I had shin splints. Do you know what I mean? I'm completely, the whole suit, I'm soaked in sweat. I can't find this stupid fucking room in this airport that I'm supposed to do this interview in. I'm like 30 minutes late. I'm looking for a wheelchair to get there. Right. And I finally find the room, and they're like, oh, you're 30 minutes late. Meanwhile, I'm like, I can't breathe. I'm sweating. I'm bloated as hell. And they're like, here, you got to fill out this application. Dude, I can't write. My hands are swollen. You know what I mean? Like, my hands are pumped. My wrists are pumped. My forearms. I'm like, I'm never getting this job, which I didn't get the job. But I don't know what made me want to do that. I knew every time I would do it, I would get sick, but I just can't stop.
Now with training, just for powerlifting, it evolved over a period of time. So what did that end up looking like for you once everything was kind of figured out? Because I think everybody has to screw up, make mistakes, figure things out for themselves. As with anything through the podcast I'm trying to teach people is there's multitude of numerous ways to get to the top. Yeah. But the one commonality amongst all of them is they figure out what works for themselves.
Right. And that depends on like a bunch of things, right? Like just what you have going on in your everyday life, all these injuries that you end up accumulating and got to adjust for. So it changed a lot towards the end. I remember like, I would usually squat on Monday, bench press on Wednesday, deadlift on Friday. I did that for mostly my whole powerlifting career. But then like for that last meet, 2012, when my back started getting funky and knee and hip and all this stuff, like I was like, let me just combine my squat and my deadlift together on Monday. And then that way I'll get like a full 7 days rest before I gotta do it again. Cause like Monday, Friday just wasn't working. By Monday, again, I couldn't squat, you know, I'm like, I would do a half-ass workout and then my deadlift would be fucked up. And like, so
yeah,
I put it together I would do like Monday, I would squat and deadlift with the majority of the time being mostly squat and then just kind of one kind of topish set for deadlift. And then that would be it. And then I think the very next day I would bench. I forget how I did it. Maybe it was Wednesday I would bench. And then I had another day that was like, I started to introduce speed squats, which I never really did other than to like almost like a deload type of workout. So I had like a second squat day in there, which was just speed work and then back work. And that worked really good for that time, right? So like, you're right. It just changes. Every meet I got ready for, I did something different for.
How did you view accessory work?
I put it super high priority. I mean, I did, since maybe because of the bodybuilding or for whatever reason, or because I wanted to try to still look good, I always incorporated it. And then I would, as I got better at it, I would try to find, what accessory movements had the biggest impact on my lifts. And then those are the ones I would do. You know what I mean? Like, so like for example, you can do like tricep push downs, right? And like, maybe you got half the stack on and you bench whatever, 400 pounds. And then you like get strong enough to do the whole stack, but like your bench is still 400 pounds. But like those dumbbell floor extensions that I learned from you guys, I would find when those got stronger, my bench went up so that was part of my tricep workout. You know what I mean? So anything that I felt that I would do that had an impact on those lifts would be my accessory movements.
So with your main movements, did you still stay with the 8s? Probably fell off, but did you stay with like 5s and 3s as you would peak into a meet?
Yes.
Now, how would the accessories change per?
They would go out, they would do the same. They would increase the weight and probably drop the reps. But most of the time it was like, I would say 3 sets, 8 would be average.
Is it the same one, or are you changing them each training session? Because let's say if you're peaking a squat, bench, or deadlift and it's in that linear style, I want a 700 squat, you're going to work it back. Right. Now with rolling dumbbell extensions, it's okay, I need to use 90s. If you roll that back, you're using like 15s.
Yeah.
You know, so how did you just manage that based upon how hard you were working those?
I think I just managed it by how I felt. I just would go by how I feel, and like I would always try to write up a plan and like map it out. Like, so a lot of the meets that I did, you have to remember back in the Powerlifting USA days, like you might open up the back of the magazine and be like, oh, shit, there's like, I mean, I never had time to train for meet. It was always like, well, there's one in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Very rarely did I know any longer ahead of time than that. Except towards the end where I started to know like, okay, I'm going to do this one in January and this one in January. But before that, it would be like, I mean, I'm telling you, almost every one I did, I had super short notice and I would just do it. But like, kind of like the West Side guys, right? Like when you kind of train heavy all the time, and other than modifying some things to peak, it's kind of there. So that's how I trained. I was always pushing. Like, I just always tried to get better and stronger. Like even back from 15, like even like I always was like trying to figure out, basically how to get stronger, whether it came to like what I ate. You know, I can remember trying to do like a tablespoon of honey before, and it's like at 15 years old, just seeing like what kind of outcome it would have. So I always kind of played with all those other variables that probably people never think about.
With the main lift, where I'm getting at is, you know, we can talk RPE or reps in reserve or all these other things, but to me, they're very hard to define because they're very subjective. You know, if you're working with a beginner, you know, their definition of hard work is the hardest they've ever worked, but it may not be that hard, right? They just don't know. Where when you lay out those big lifts and then you kind of fold it all back, and week 12 is 440 for 3 sets 8. It's not hard, right? And you could probably do 20.
Right.
But you're not going to.
Because you have next week.
Because that's the next week. It could impact that. And we'll talk about triples later, because this changes when the weight gets heavier. But on the accessories, the intent with that can kind of change, or should change, the more accessories you're doing. So say the first accessory, you're going to push hard.
Well, you can.
And that one you may not be able to extend out for more than a few weeks, because if it's in the 3 to 5 rep range or 6 rep range, you can only progress so far, with that. But with most lifters that I know, when they get to those accessories, the intent and the effort is hard. There may be 1 rep left. They're not going to failure in any of this shit at that level, but they're close. They're definitely close. Now, as you move down into like the last movements, push downs, hammer
like
curls,
rope push downs, isolation curls, whatever, to get a pump.
Yeah, I mean, that's just pump work, and that could go to failure, but only because you're going to you're going to use a slower tempo. You're just going to do something. You're not going to have to systemically recover from that unless you're an idiot, doing cheap barbell curls or, hammer curls with 140-pound dumbbells or stupid shit like that. But on the top end accessory work, where I call it a runway, right? Like, how many weeks can you get out of this?
Right.
So if it's a 3 board press and you want to run it for 3 weeks, you can't totally bust your ass on it. You leave maybe 1 or 2, then the next week,
more.
Then you're going to go more. And then maybe after the 3rd week, you're like, you know what? That last week was,
it's time to switch
I don't think I got another 5 pounds on this. It's time to switch it out.
That's what I would do. And I learned that from you guys, from Reside, right? Rotating every 3-4 weeks, knowing that it's like, and everybody's different, like you're saying. So like some of my clients, maybe I can run something for 7-8 weeks, before I see it coming. And then for that person, I know, like, okay, like they can usually only progress like this for about 7 weeks. And so before you have that shitty week that is coming, I just switch up the exercise.
Yeah, and for those beginners, they don't know how to really do the movement. So the first 3 or 4 weeks, at one level, I could say they're not getting stronger. They're just getting better at the movement.
Definitely.
Right. Then the last few, they're getting stronger, where the more advanced you get, that skill. Yeah. So you're getting stronger from the first to the second.
Like, you guys could rotate every week and be fine, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. But like, beginner, like you said, it's going to take a couple of times to even learn the movement and get the motor patterns down.
Yeah. And it's the intent, it's what is the movement being done for? I think that gets lost a little bit today as well, where no matter what program you look at, if it's conjugate or however somebody does, like, you got a main movement, which is programmed out, or should be. And it will change, by the way. We'll talk about it. It will change. No matter what you put on paper, it's going to change. If it doesn't, something's wrong.
Right.
Right.
I mean, that's what I said. I just would have a plan, and then I would go in like, this is what I'm supposed to do today. You warm up, and then it's like, we're changing this.
Yeah. It's a template, more or less.
Change it. Right.
Yeah. And then that intent, as you move down, of how hard you're going to push, gets less and less and less and less with each movement, where the bottom movements, sometimes you need to do them, if it's ab work or grip work or what. Nobody wants to do the shit. Yeah. But you need to, but the intent's not that hard.
Right. And that's how my training's set up with myself and my clients, is that main movement. And then, like, I don't know, let's just say chest, for example, you bench press, right? And then maybe I'll do a variation of that, like an incline dumbbell, and then more of like an isolation movement, like some kind of fly. You know what I mean? So you get like kind of 3 different movements. And then that last one, like you're saying, is just for a pump and light, and you're just doing it basically to do it.
Have you found with the beginners and even the intermediates, sticking in the isolation movements, mid session or late session, helps them to develop the mind muscle connection?
Yeah.
Because I think that's another thing that's very overlooked, because I'll get asked sometimes, should beginners be doing isolation movements? And obviously the answer is always, it depends, right? But to me, yeah, they should.
Me too.
Because they have to learn what their tricep feels like if it's pumped and how to flex.
Right.
You know, at one point, everybody knows how to flex their pecs. At the highest level, you can flex your tricep just sitting there, your bicep, your quad, your calf without really moving anything.
Right.
They're not there.
Right.
And it's very hard to teach them that on only compound lifts where they can't focus on that body part.
Yeah.
I think that's a great thing from bodybuilding that can, you know, pull into powerlifting.
Absolutely. Is
a lot of movements too, like side raises. You know, you don't need to use 70-pound side raises.
No. 20s.
Whatever, yeah. Tighten the intent.
Yeah.
And do it right. And you get more out of it.
Yeah.
Right. Your side raise isn't going to make your bench stronger. Right. The stabilization, maybe. Right. But generally, no.
Right.
Right. You're doing it for joint health or whatever.
And to recognize the next day when maybe your shoulders are sore, like, oh, that movement is what makes, you know, like that's the muscle that's making that movement happen. Yeah.
And if they make that accessory, if they cheat enough on it, the accessory essentially becomes a compound movement, which now you're going to have that systemic fatigue, which is going to inhibit that next training session. If you're doing 80-pound side raises and you're swinging them all up, right? That's basically
your bench might not be so good.
Your bench isn't going to be so good, right? Because everything's shot, your lower back shot, everything's shot. So it has that impact there as well.
That's a super good point. And in fact, I just did it with a client last week where we did like a 2-board bench press session, and then I had him do like flies, and then we went back to like a barbell movement. You know, because like found like a sticking point and wanted to make sure that's what it was. But like you can play around with those movements for sure. I have them put in everybody's program.
Now, when you're in the phase of the heavy triples, this is where it becomes a fun conversation. And let's just assume there's one set of 3. We'll just make it easy.
Okay.
All right. So one set of 3. And you're going through that set, and the second rep is super easy. Let's say you're 6 weeks out. Second rep is super easy. The third rep is kind of easy. Some people will think you should do more, right? Or do a 4th rep with an AMRAP, but they don't think next week the weight goes up another 15 pounds.
Right.
You know, so there's a time and a place.
Stick to the plan.
You know, for that. So you stick to the plan unless there's other variables. You know, it's anabolics could be one, or just weight gain. Let's just say weight gain, make it easy. You know, if somebody's gaining weight into the meet and they're up 30 pounds and everything else is stronger, you know, I still say stick to the plan, but the next week, maybe add another 5.
Adjust for it.
You adjust for it.
Right.
Yes.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
That's the line we write. That's like the question we always got to be able to answer, right? Like, do you push it or you don't?
Yeah.
And like you said, that comes down to what you have coming up the next week. Maybe the next week you have programmed like that's going to be a lighter week for whatever reason. Because like I'll program that in there if I was getting ready for meet, like knowing like, damn, dude, if this works out that way, like you just went like 4 weeks super hard. So like I'm going to make this 5th week like a lighter workout, right? So maybe that 4th one before that one, it feels like what you're saying. Maybe you push a little more because you know you got a later one coming up.
Or on the opposite end of that, say it's a triple and the first one feels like trash, and then the second one is even worse.
Right.
Rack it.
Yeah.
You know, and that would be the right answer. But I would say that would be one that most lifters that I know, if they're going to fail on that one, probably more than anything else, because in your brain, you're already kind of locked in.
Yeah.
And then part of you is like, you're just being a puss, or, you know, you didn't hit the right groove or whatever it's going to be. Logically, you should just rack it.
Right.
And then, because the outside factors can be impacting that.
Right. And then you got to assess like, why did that feel like shit? Like maybe it was a simple cue or technical flaw you did. Like, because if that's the case, then like come back and get it maybe.
Yeah. So how did you regulate all this with bodybuilding? Because now we're talking about more volume, you know, so if there's 15 sets for your chest.
As in a bodybuilding workout?
In a bodybuilding workout.
Bodybuilding workouts to me are like easy.
I mean, but you can do 30 sets if you want, but is it necessary?
So that I don't know. And I don't even know if I ever figured that out. Right.
Yeah.
Because now looking back, I wonder like, yeah, did I have to do that much or push that hard to get those bodybuilding results? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'll tell you probably for sure overtrained for those last couple shows. One, I found out like I had sleep apnea. Like I remember going to the Team Universe show and like we were driving down and like looking at my ankles, like I'm swollen, man. Like I should not be swollen right now, you know, like what's going on? But it was because I wasn't sleeping, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So all those things playing a part, and then you look in like all the cardio sessions I was doing, like I had to get up at 4 a.m. to be at the gym at 5 a.m. to do an hour of cardio. So I had time to shower, eat, and get ready for my 7 a.m. client. And looking back, it was like, you should have just slept. Like
Mm-hmm.
that cardio, like sleep would have been way better than doing that cardio session, I think now,
Mm-hmm.
looking back.
Well, now, but it's, you come from that, you come from a highly disciplined, intense mindset,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which got you what you got in powerlifting and all this other kind of stuff, where yes, there was probably a lot of days you didn't want to train, but you still trained it. Anybody that says differently is just a liar.
Mm-hmm.
But with the mindset you have, it needs more pulled back than pushed.
Right.
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 So that's that balance that you got to walk there to where you're going to overtrain before you're going to,
Mm-hmm.
if overtraining is what people say it is, but overreaching, overtraining, whatever it's going to be. But with the bodybuilding is there's a pump involved where a lot of people will just train until have the hardest pump that they have. And then if they start to lose that, they're done.
They're done.
Did you kind of go off of that, or no, this was the work I have to do, or
No,
I want to do?
I went by feel, and I went by feel, and I think it's kind of what you said, which I never really thought about. I don't think I ever thought about it that way, but I think I just trained until I felt like, man, like I can't, you know what I mean? Like if I do another set, like my muscles are gonna rip. I think that's how I trained. I didn't have like, I mean, I had the days that I was gonna do which body part, and I would go in and kind of, if I was training with somebody that day, we were just kind of like, hey, what do you want to do for chest? I was thinking this, I was thinking that. Okay, well, let's do this first and then do your second, and then we'll add this to it. Right. And like, just trained.
Yeah.
And then when you have somebody that is a whole nother factor, right? Like if this guy's a maniac and feeling good, want to push, then of course I'm going to push. And maybe if we're both feeling like shit, we kind of do an easier day. But I just kind of went by feel, and you know, it depends too if you're dieting or if you're in the off season. If I was trying to get bigger, then it would be more like heavier, lower rep, not so much work. And then when the show would get close, you know, you're so depleted, you're not strong. Like I remember like 185, like I can't even squat this, you know, like my legs are just gonna break. So like, I don't know, at that point, if you can't squat 185, like should you be squatting anymore? I don't know. It's hard to judge that stuff. So you got to go by the mirror and how you look, and what that workout did for my look more than anything, not so much the weight.
How did you navigate training through or around injuries?
Just kept figuring out a way to train, like that adductor thing, like you know, like I think I could do, if I remember right, like I could do good mornings or whatever. So I just did good mornings, you know what I mean? And like I could do extensions or whatever it was, just found things that I could do to get by. And a lot of times I found that those, however you hurt, wherever that injury came from, usually ended up being a good way to rehab it. Right. So like, I don't know, tear your pec, like benching probably, I don't know, maybe that's not right, but that's how
that's how I always thought about it, because
think,
if that's how it tore, then that's probably the best way to get blood back into it.
Right. I mean, that's how I think.
Is from that. And it made sense.
Yeah. Some that's where the gear come in handy, right? Like I could put on a pair of briefs and maybe deal with that adductor from that compression on my leg, you know, and a pec for sure, gonna wear a bench shirt, right? Like that'll, in my mind, protect it.
What are some of the things that you see with lifters that may be in your gym now that would, I don't want to say mistakes, that they could do better?
Everything. I mean, coming from where we came from, it's a whole different world. I mean, number one, the phone thing is like completely out of hand. I don't know. I mean, I'm guilty of it too, I guess, because I'm working and like the whole business is on the phone, like on my phone with like emails and all that stuff. I try my best to just put it away for the hour, but from by myself, I kind of have to keep an eye on those things. But like there's there's no intensity. I mean, I wish people could see what we did, right? Yeah. Like they don't understand.
When you mean intensity, are you effort?
Effort.
Yeah.
Effort. So like, and that's another good question. What do you mean by effort? Because I'll see people work out for 4 hours. I mean, there's 15 minutes between sets. They're on their phone. Like, I don't know. It's that, like, is that, I don't know. It's like, how are you going to get anywhere with that? But they do okay. Like a lot of them do like the squat every day thing and bench every day and deadlift every day. And they're decent. The numbers aren't horrible, but they seem to just like, they're just there. They never really go up. Like I have to see progression, even with my clients. Like I don't care who they are. I'm gonna be 70 years old. Like in my mind, they're paying me that every time we train, you're going to be better. Whether it's an extra rep or another set, we shorten the time between the sets. We changed the order. You know what I mean? Like we did something that made it harder and you did better.
Yeah. Well, you've done this long enough to be able to know there's stretches of time where your main lifts, no matter what you do, they're probably not going to go up. It's just the reality of when you get to a higher level.
Sure.
But what can go up are the accessories that you're pushing. And a lot of times, even if they go up, they may not correspond, as you're talking about like still, a push down, but you don't know if it's going to correspond and not correspond if you're not doing them at all.
Right.
You rotate through different things. And every now and again, I would find something like a close grip incline press on a steep incline, always drove my bench, always, so I would find that outside of a meet and be like, oh, wait a minute. Every time I do these, when I go in to do speed work the next time, it's like a feather.
Yeah.
I'm not ever doing this again until the meet comes around because I don't want to ruin it. Like, so this goes into my gold box, and then something else would come in. And I think with the lifters that you're speaking about that are 3-4 times a week on the lifts, typically they don't have any accessories at all.
They don't have any.
So I don't know how they can live in that rut when those lifts do stall. Because if they didn't, we would all have been benching 2,000 pounds and squatting. It just.
I mean, took years to add.
Exactly.
5 pounds,
I mean, the reality is there are sticking points, there are injuries, there are outside factors that can influence all these things. But in my opinion, it sounds like where you're coming from the same page. Other things can get better. So
how do they not stay motivated by doing that stuff, right?
It's like, okay, my bench is going to suck, but maybe I can build my floor press somehow.
Do something, but I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know, maybe they're doing it for the wrong reasons now, like doing it for social media, doing it for other reasons, or like, I did it because I loved it. Like, I didn't need a meet to do, I didn't need a record to break. Like, I just love to lift. And now I'm at the point where like, I have to do stupid stuff to regulate myself, so don't do anything too intense. We were talking before, like I won't listen to music, I won't have pre-workout, I like just give myself like an hour to lift. And
but when you stay in that state for too long, does it drive you nuts?
I hate it. Like I want to lift heavy, but my body tells me like, maybe you shouldn't. I guess that's what it's saying.
Yeah.
There's a pain factor that comes in there, and I'm at the point where I just like, I mean, I've been squatting and deadlifting and benching again, and I haven't been able to do that without pain in like a long time.
Yeah. The way that I've navigated that is I found that because I can't use a straight bar to squat, so it's a safety squat bar, spider bar, Mars bar, something with a freaking pad on it, is I'll use a high box. And basically I found movements that are almost impossible for me to get hurt on, but I can still strain really hard. Right. And it doesn't matter if the weight's going to be 400, 500, 800. I just want that strain. Right. And that's enough. And then I can do that, every other week or once a
Sure.
week. And then all the rest of the week is to either recover from that or to get ready to be able to do that again. And then it gave some significance to all the other crap I have to do during the week, which I really don't want to do.
Yeah.
You take that away. I don't know, man. I don't know.
It's hard.
I don't know. Because like riding a bike doesn't do shit for me.
Yeah.
Now, when I was training with John, he would have these challenge sets. That's the only shit I liked.
Yeah.
All the other bodybuilding stuff I didn't like. But it's like, do you think we can do 50 on the leg press with what we just did for sets of 15? Like, fuck it. I don't know. Get the ammonia. Let's find out. But that, right? That was fun. That was a hard. It's a different hard. That's why I asked earlier. It's a different hard that was kind of satisfying, but it wasn't the same as straining through one rep.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah. And you got to think too, like the last 3 years have just been recovering from surgeries. So like, that I just can't, what I mean? I just can't. But I feel like hopefully this keeps going the right direction, that like now I can at least go up to some like heavy triples on the squat.
No, but a good thing about the surgeries is it gives you something to train for too. Because you just had the surgery now. So that you want to get back.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Like that, that's my like motivation right now.
Yeah.
When that phase is over, I'm with you, like just to come in and do stuff. Like I don't know.
So when you went into jiu-jitsu, your body's already beat up.
So trashed.
So how did that go?
Not good, man. Not good. I mean, I didn't get hurt doing it, but like my back was so bad. Like basically I think everything was just like in a constant spasm, and all it would take was like a squat and it would just lock up. That honestly, like how different can we get, right? Like so much different, like all that movement that I'm not used to. That was a challenge. So I like found excitement in trying to get my body to do that shit, even though.
Were you able to just like
so when you have the gi on,
and
you have pretty good strength, like I can just like kind of grab your sleeves and you can't really do anything for me. You know what I mean? So like I can get by, you know what I mean? And so with that gi on, there's a lot of grips and like you don't want to extend your arms or give those up or any of your limbs. So everything's in here anyway, which is where I fucking wanted to be 100%, right? Like I did not want anybody taking my arm away from me. So like I was good at that and learned how to move. And like the more I moved, I did feel like I did start to feel better in certain ways. To get in that movement because I was stuck in that powerlifting world for so long that like I don't know how you were, but like there was no outside activities at all. Like you want to play kickball? No. If I tear my hamstring, I'm done. You know what I mean? Like so I didn't do anything, which was dumb looking back. But
I don't know though. Right.
I mean, I couldn't have done what I did by not doing that, right? I had to not do it. But
because there's always a risk, and that's how I always kind of saw it. Now, some of it was stupid. Like I don't want to go to the zoo and walk around with my kids because, I'm not going to be able to recover from my squat, which should have been an indication that you're not in shape. Like walking 5,000 steps shouldn't fuck up your squat workout. But back then it was like a badge of honor. Like it's cool. I'm ready, man. I can't walk across the street. I'm ready for this meet, right? It's so fucked up, but it's kind of what the universal mindset was.
So true.
It's like, man, you look so ready and look like you're gonna die.
Yeah, man.
Your
head looks giant.
Yes.
Face looks small. Yeah,
exactly. Cool. And there were people trying to tell us along the way, you don't need to do this shit. Like, shut up, man. It's just
the strongest I've ever been. What are you talking about?
So I like what I'm eating. I'm doing just fine.
Right.
It's all good. But
yeah, back to the jiu-jitsu. Like, I was, I could train somebody like a jiu-jitsu person, and I knew what to do with them, training wise with weights to transfer over. But like myself, like I was having a hard time because like that took so much of a toll on me that like now lifting is like next to nothing. I couldn't do both with any kind of intensity.
Now,
which I didn't like. I didn't like that.
No, I could see that, especially when you're singularly focused.
Yeah. So like towards the end, before these couple surgeries, I was like, I would like Actually, for like a whole year, I just did like one private session a week. Like I didn't do the classes or anything because I was recovering from the pec, and I was like, I don't need some 20-year-old white belt, like, trying to break my arm off. So I'm just going to go with the instructor and do once a week. And after that session, I would go try to deadlift or squat or some kind of movement like that. And that worked. But it was like, yeah, I can only do 1 hour jiu-jitsu a week. Like I'm not going to get too much better doing that.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, going back, you started training people online before it really was a thing.
I think so. Yeah. I don't even remember when I started that, but
how did it come to be? Was it clients that you were working with that would just move? Because it seems to be how a lot did.
So I would say most of my first clients were ones that I've trained in person, and then the way it's priced out, like definitely more affordable to do online. So like I would be like, if somebody didn't have the money or whatever to train in person, it's like, well, we can do this online, and I've trained you, so like I know you're gonna do the right stuff, like you know how to do the movements. So like even if I take on somebody new now, like if they haven't worked with me, with the exception of being out of state or something like that, but I don't have too many people like that. But I'll make them work with me so I know they know how to do the lift. 'Cause like it's too hard to try to type and communicate back and forth and teach somebody how to squat right, so I'll like usually have them do at least a session of each lift with me, and then like kind of like I'll assess like if this is going to work for you or not. Because like I don't take on that many. It's not that many people.
Yeah.
I don't. It takes a lot of time. The way I do it takes too much time.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about, is how are you bridging the gap between, because it's a completely different experience, right? Because you don't see the nonverbals, you don't see the warm-ups, you don't see the reps, you don't see all that.
Right.
But there's a shit ton of people, that are using online coaches. And a lot of them that have been around for a long time have found ways to kind of mitigate, not all of it, but much of it. So your way to mitigate it is to try to get them in person,
just to see like if this is a good fit. Like, I mean, this more than anybody. Like if you don't trust somebody, or right, if somebody doesn't trust me, it's not going to work. I don't care who I am or whatever, right? So I got to make sure they trust me. Most of my online clients are actually my powerlifters, because like to think about, like I have a few that I train in person, but that I have an hour. You know what I mean? Luckily now it's raw, so like I can actually get through a legit workout in an hour with most people. One guy would do like a 2-hour session, but like, and then so like all my online stuff is mostly people that do compete. So I handle them in the like off season, and then if they get ready for meet, I help them peak. How do
you differentiate, I can't say the word, the off season from preseason, or we never used these words before.
No, I know.
So it was just, I don't even know what meet prep was, because everything was kind of meet prep.
Trained, right? Yeah. And I kind of do the same thing now with my clients. Like, I can get any of them ready in, I want to say 6 weeks. Right? I mean, it's just a matter of changing up those last couple of weeks to peak out, and as long as they've been training, I think I can get them ready and probably beat all their numbers that they've ever done.
Have you seen weak points change throughout the years
on somebody?
Just in general, like for, trying to think of examples that for a long time, squatting issues were just falling forward. Now it's more, I guess, still falling forward, but there's a stability. It's not setting up right.
Right.
It seems to me.
So many things.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things that can change. And like, I have people I see every week, and you think by now they would know because I've told them every week the same cue or whatever. But sometimes it takes, I don't know, maybe I'm a bad coach. Sometimes it takes 3 years, and then all of a sudden they're like, they do something that you've been telling them to do. And they'll joke with me and be like, because you never told me that before. Like they hear it, but sometimes it just, for whatever reason, doesn't click, or they don't make that association for a long time. Once they do, then like opens up a whole new door. It's like, and they can't argue with me because like, yeah, I mean, I've been telling you that same, and I've told you 10 different ways, and I've tried 15 different exercises to get you to feel that or whatever. And they just don't get it. And I try to remember like there's shit I'm not good at, and you could show me how to build this table maybe 100 times, and like, I don't know, maybe I'm not going to be able to build it.
Well, there's a difference there, because if you really care and you really want to do it, like if you really wanted to learn how to build a table, really wanted to, you would figure it out.
Yeah.
Where if they really, really want to, and that could fall into some of the things you were saying before with the effort and the intent and so forth, is maybe it's just not as deep as what others may have.
And that awareness thing that you said, like some people just don't have it. They didn't play sports. They don't have any kind of background with it.
Hey guys, if you like and want to support the podcast, remember we have limited edition items. These items can range anywhere from t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, cups. You never know what you're going to get. Check them out at www.elitefts.com.
Body. So it takes a while to figure that out. I think as a kid or a teenager, you figure it out much faster than somebody in their 40s or 50s. Like if you haven't done anything and you're 40 and you start powerlifting, some people do good, but some people it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, some of the things that I've seen of late, as far as if I'm going to say these are like weak points that I'm seeing across the board, but lifters would be their setup. Especially if it's a walkout, right? The walkout's not good. And some of that, I guess I can probably blame on Instagram, because the lifters don't show their walkout. They just show the squat from the time that they squat. So you don't see the approach to the bar, how they're setting under the bar, or, the bench as well. You're not seeing how they actually lay down on the bench, how they approach the bench. All these things need to be repeated, over and over and over. And you see that when you're in a gym setting with a group of lifters. It's like you realize real quick, okay, they all do that.
You would think people would see that. A lot of people don't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's squatting next to somebody that has absolutely perfect form, and they don't even know. Right? Theirs looks like trash, and they can't even tell that it's different, which drives me crazy.
Yeah, see, the thing with that used to drive me crazy is I would see stuff like that, but I knew I was stronger than the person, and it would piss me off. Like, if I'm physically stronger, but yet they're squatting more than I am, then what are they doing that I'm not doing? Because this doesn't add up.
Sure. And that's how, like, competing with Ricky Crane and stuff, you're like, how are you doing that? And you watch his squat, and it's like the same every single time, exactly same execution. And so, like, that's where I learned that. But when I get a new client, like, that's the first thing we go over and teach. They're like, tell them step by step, this is how you're going to set up, and this is the cues, and this is the bar path, and that's what we work on from day one.
Well, cues can be a weird thing too, right? It can be a very weird thing, right?
There's so many getting thrown out there that have no.
Exactly.
It's like,
and some of them don't even make sense. Whereas, for instance, and multiply gears changed, right? So you're not going to get more out of gear by sitting back. You have to flare and sit down more, because it's coming more through the crotch panel than it is through the back. But yet people are telling, screaming back, and I'm like, don't fucking say that, because they're first off, they're probably not hearing you in the first place, right? And if they do, and they do it, you just screwed their lift up. It doesn't make any sense,
right?
Whereas they're individualized, I guess is where I'm getting. And I kind of learned this just by putting content online, because I would they would film me kind of coaching somebody, and I'm telling them whatever I have to tell them to get it right. Right. I never thought on the receiving end, somebody may listen to this and think that's fucked up. You know, it's like arching the bar in a squat would be a good example of that, where, and that kind of comes from West Side. And I had to do a lot of thought into this one, right? Because I've seen people arch really hard when they squat and they look like a banana. And you know that's fucked up, right? I mean, you're just looking at the spine and how it relates to the bar. It's just not right, right? And I'm like, but, you know, we always said arch, 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 arch. So then it hit me one day that, well, our erectors were like the size of 2 liters.
Right.
We're not arching, we're just tightening our back.
Right.
Because if we were,
doesn't look how you think. Yeah,
so that's where those cues can become a little screwed up, because you may tell somebody with their feet, look, turn your toes out, but all you're really concerned about is their foot flat, rooted, and planted.
Right.
Where so I've had some people, I've had to tell them on the way, you know, before you squat, lift your heel up, right? They're not lifting their heel up, right? But they're so pulling their toes up so hard that for me to tell them to do that makes the foot flat.
Right.
So you got to be careful when this shit goes online, because you're just trying to get, and I'll tell people now if I'm working with them, listen, what I'm telling you is specific to you,
right?
Not you, not you, not you. Don't do that, you know, because I'm going to say whatever it takes to work.
I say the same thing. Like, hey, just so you know, like, whatever, there's other ways to do this, or you're going to see variations of this. But this is where you're going to start from, you know?
Yeah. Because we're looking for a clean lift.
Yeah.
You know,
and that might change over time.
Oh, of course.
And all that. How about the heels down thing, benching, right? That's a multi-apply bench thing, right? So everybody was up on their toes, and then it'd be heels, heels, heels. But it's like nobody's heels ever went down. I never understood it.
No, exactly.
What does that mean? Like, why are you screaming heels when like their foot never goes down? Like, I don't understand. I still don't understand.
Yeah. Well, I think the intent with that was to try to get them to pull their belly up, but wouldn't it make more sense to tell them to lift their, and the belly is even a weird one because you're not benching to your belly.
Yeah.
Right. You're expanding your ribs is what you're doing.
Right.
So whatever you need to do to get the rib cage up, which maybe your shoulders packed more, you know, there's a lot of different things, but it's not that.
But that's a fun part of coaching and training people, is like learning those cues and figuring out. There, you might have 10 different ways to say it, but this person only understands way number 1, and this person only understands way number 2. It's just like, you just got to figure it out.
Now, when you're looking at somebody's, we'll go with the squat. When you're looking at the squat, what are you looking for out? So are you watching bar path? Are you watching joint position? Are you watching, obviously we're watching all of it, but what are you looking at the most?
So that's usually the lift I start people on, and squats, I feel like just overall in general gives me a super good idea what their weaknesses are, and what their strengths are. I normally start somebody by, I'll tell, like, if it's a new person, I'll say, like, if they've been squatting or they haven't been. Well, if they've been squatting, let's just say, I'll have them show me with the bar, empty bar. Let me see what you've been up to. And then I kind of assess it from there. Okay, like, whatever, maybe their feet are 6 inches apart, and their ass is touching the floor every rep, and the bar is like at the top of their traps, you know what I mean? And their elbows are winged back like this, you know what I mean? So like, and then and now I got to ask myself, like, what's this person here for? Do they plan on competing, or they're just like an average person that just wants to build some muscle, right? Because then in that case, maybe I don't have to get too crazy, at least right away, trying to fix all this crap. So I'll just take it from there, and let's just say it's a power lifter. You know, I'll ask them how they feel, and they'll usually say, well, like, my knees hurt, and usually the side of my back hurts, and, you know what I mean? I have tendonitis in this elbow. And I'm like, okay, well, it's probably because of the way you're holding the bar. Let me show you how I would set up. And I go over the setup. And then I have them it's just step by step. I have them walk back the bar, try again now with just new bar placement, you know, new hand placement, new bar placement, and see what changes, see what else needs fixed, right? It's like, okay, now let's widen your feet out a little bit. Let's turn your toes out a little bit. Okay, cool. So we're doing all that, but maybe their knees are still coming forward. And it's like, okay, now I got to teach this person how to sit back a little bit. So, you know, I'll try to explain to them, okay, now you got to start the lift with a hinge rather than rather than with your knees, because maybe they're starting with their knees first. Yep. Maybe they're starting with both. So, okay, let's try to hinge into that, and not you're not just going to hinge, right, and do a good morning. We're just going to do a little hinge, and then you're going to bend your knees and kind of sit back into it. And I want the weight. I'll focus on where I want the weight, like on your foot, right? So like, let's keep it. I used to say heels, and then you start having the stuff you're talking about, the toes coming up. So now I just say like the middle of your foot. Like, let's just keep it centered with the middle of your foot. And like, I'll even position them, like lean forward a little bit when you're standing. Do you feel that go to your toes? Yeah. Okay. Lean back. Do you feel your heels? Cool. Now let's keep it in the middle as you're going to sit back into this. And then like, you'll see them like stand up and be like, what? Like, dude, like that feels great, you know? And then we just start building from there. Okay. Let's add a little bit of weight. Can you do it? And like, sometimes they'll mess something up, or they'll, you know, and I'll also focus a lot on their eccentric phase coming down. Everybody just wants to drop when they're first learning. I just like tell them, like, just pretend like you're a spring and somebody's going to push you down and you're kind of resisting me. You know what I mean? And you're building up that tension. Like, that tension is your friend. Don't get freaked out by that tension. Like, you want to sit back and you want to stretch your hamstrings, you want to stretch your glutes, and you want that spring to be loaded so you can power out of the bottom. So then I start to get into that a little more. Okay, now you got the technique going. Now let's keep that control coming down nice and slow and controlled. And then when you go to change directions, you know, game over. It's go up with some intent and put some power behind it. And then it makes it fun, and they start to like feel better and find that explosive power that they have. And I think that's what's fun.
No, it's the other cool thing about that is once they lock it in, you may have just added 50 pounds on their squat.
Easily. I mean, I have countless examples where like they'll come in like best bench is this, and like, I mean, right away we had weight the first session. They're just, and they feel better.
Yeah.
Right? And things aren't hurting. And so those are the best clients when I wish I would film more of them, because it's like so cool to see like when somebody comes in and how they feel and what they feel like and all that. And they kind of stop squatting because it just doesn't feel right. So then that's why they find me. And then like I can fix them in an hour, man. And it's awesome.
No, it's good. So with the bench, how do you walk them through that? Same way you did the squat?
Same thing. So I have like a dowel rod or just a 1-inch PVC pipe. And a lot of times I'll just start with that. So like I can like talk to them and correct them without them trying to even hold anything. And I'll say, let's see what you're doing here. And I see where they're touching. I'm a big believer in trying to keep that wrist over your elbow as you're coming down. So we'll see if they're like tucking their elbows too much or flaring their elbows too much. And usually it starts just like the squat, right? Like with your feet, but on the bench, it's going to be with your hands. Let's get the hands situated. Let's find the proper rough placement. We'll dial it in as we go, but let's go with this grip. Usually make them take a full grip on the bar most of the time. So like suicide grip till I get to know them. So they're not chopping something on their face for session. But I try to teach them how to use their lats and how to pull the weight down. And I try to like explain to them like that wrist has to be above your elbow at that bottom position. Like that's where your power is going to come from, your lat, your tricep, right? Your pecs too. But like that negative is you loading your lats and your back, right? And stretching that. And same thing, like when they come down with the bar, I say like, find that tension, right? So like, just like we learned in a shirt, you're not going to come down in a shirt and like get away from the tension, put it on your belly or bring it to your neck. You want to find that extreme tension so that you have that rebound out of it. So I teach it just like that. And because some people get afraid, you don't realize it. I try not to say afraid when I'm training them, but they like tend to get scared of that feeling of like that pressure. So they go away from it. No, man, like, go in that. And then when they start doing it, they can feel the difference, and they're like, oh fuck, like I've been staying away from that the whole time. I try to teach them to push through their palm, you know, so you don't want the bar back on your knuckles with nothing supporting you there. That weight has to be across your palm, where you have all your forearms and everything underneath you to push from. Some of the cues we know get mixed up from the multiply into the raw, like you said about sitting back. benching, right, in a shirt, maybe we're going to push back a little bit into the rack. But on the raw stuff, I try to teach in a straight line. Now, in reality, if you look, it's probably going back a little
I
bit,
get what you're saying, yeah.
But I still teach like, okay, when we take this out, imagine where that bar is at, and then that's the target for when you're done. You're going to touch your chest, and you're going to return it right back to where it started from. You know, the whole bend the bar thing, it's a pretty good cue for the most part. I'll just have them grab the bar and like just show them that little bit of internal rotation from the elbow, and that's it. If we overdo it, so when I have this broomstick or whatever, I can show them like, I'll have them like, hey, touch this bar on your belly, like on your belly button this time, and they'll go like that. I'm like, okay, well now you're not stacked like we just talked about, right? So to touch your belly button, your elbow's got to be in here now, so that stays stacked. So no matter where we touch, that's gonna stay stacked. And so that's kind of just how I teach it. And then we go into the, like, I can get in, once that's done, then I'll go into the setup and like how to get some kind of arch, how to get some kind of leg drive, which I think is way over thought about or talked about. Like that leg drive to me is, it's not that much like it, right? It's just kind of there because of how we set up and that tension. Yeah. It's not like really like you're, at least me, I don't know. I never really like was a big pusher, like pushed from my feet. Number one, your butt's going to come off. Yeah. The tension's just for the stability. Yeah. So a lot of times I'll set them up like out of position forward on the bench. So instead of your eyes being underneath the bar, we're way forward. And I'm like lift their butt off the bench and then like drive back to that spot we want to be in. And that activation of your legs to push you back, if you just keep that and I'll set your ass down and you're good. Like that's your leg drive. You know, and of course, like on a grinder rep or some extra rep you didn't plan on doing, maybe they find that. I'm like, what the fuck? What was that? Like, that's the leg drive. Like, that's all it is? Like, yeah, that's all it is. Yeah. So it's a tightness, right? Yeah, I think that it's been made into this mystery type thing. Like, if you nail it right, you're going to bench 100 pounds more. And that's just not true. No, that's not true. And some people I've found, like, when they try to arch so much, it actually screws up everything. It's like overly done. You know, it just doesn't, it's too much. It doesn't work right. Same with like being too aggressive, like just setting up too aggressively for like 95 pounds. Like you've seen those guys. That, yeah. You know what I mean? Like crazy high intensity for like a 135 bench, like when they bench 400 or whatever. Yeah. You got to like increase that intensity as the weight climbs up, at least I think. Yes. Yes. Right. Yeah. I mean, the form and the technique should be right. It's the same, but how tight you're going to get should escalate as the weight goes up. Otherwise, you're going to be so fatigued. You're not going to be able to do the top weight anyhow. So I just think of like a volume dial and just like, we're just going to slowly turn up that intensity as we go. Were there any topics that you wanted to discuss I didn't bring up? I don't know. We covered a lot of stuff, man. I can talk. I can talk all day about this stuff. Yeah. No, we covered the crazy story about opening up the gym and some of the better meets I had, training around injuries, and no, I'm just What's the best way people can reach you? Just through email usually, just celliesfitnesscenter@gmail.com. So your website? Yeah, my website, phone call. That's all. I'm on Instagram more than, I don't really go on Facebook too much, so mostly Instagram. Okay. So we have a page on there and I have a personal page on there. Do you have any final thoughts? Not really. Super cool to be here to talk to you. Like growing up, like, so, yeah, it's all a big deal. Get me all emotional. But yeah, like always followed and looked up to and learned a lot. Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming out. One of the things I love about doing this podcast is I can take people that really know their shit, but they don't have 1 million followers. Yeah, I don't know. Right. And then get their voice and their information and their content out, because when you're in the trenches actually doing it, you know, you can provide the information that the others can't. Not saying that all the people with 1 million followers suck, but you know, there is a disproportionate relationship with those that do, right? Where
you know, just the nature of the way the internet and algorithms and all that kind of work, it's hard to get the good voices in front of people who can really help and make the biggest difference and know what they're doing. And so that's why I wanted to have you out. And that's why I have a lot of the people that are out on the podcast is for that reason, because people are, I don't want to say they're looking up to the wrong heroes, because that's probably a bad word. You know, they're looking kind of in the wrong places for the information, where, you know, when we were coming up, we're looking everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And now there's a lot of singular focus. Like, I'm only going to listen to this camp.
Right.
And it's like, man, you need to listen to every camp. You need to listen to the people that came before you. You need to listen to even the upcomers now that are just hitting things crazy. You need to listen to them. You got to listen to it all, because eventually you need to figure it out for yourself.
So yeah, like I can finish on that note. Like, you know, how you look back and you think, how did you learn what you learned, right? Like, there was no internet. You had some books and you had some magazines and articles. But you literally had to show up at the gym and like find the strongest dude there and be like, how are you doing this? Right. And like talk to people in person and listen, right. And listen and take that information and build on that, where now it's not there, or there's too much access to too many different things. And nobody, like I said, nobody knows where to look, and they're looking in the wrong places. But this all goes back to the basics. I don't care what anybody says, right? It's the basics. There's not much to overthink. It's not that complex, right? It's pretty simple. You just have to keep it simple, and there's no magic. There's no magic workout. Like I said, I trained for every meet differently, and they all worked for the most part. You know, a couple shitty ones here and there, but for the most part, they all work. So yeah, you got to go back to the roots and the old school people that figured all this stuff out, right? Yeah. Not too much new stuff being figured out.
No, it's just being, and it's always been that way. It's just being retermed, redefined, but the basics are the basics.
Right.
And they're boring, you know, which I get that, you know, but that's how you succeed.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to thank you for coming out.
Thank you for having me on.
It's been a pleasure, and we're done.
Right.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching the video to the end. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and click here, or here for more videos.